Chapter 29:10. 20,000 miles away from Tianfeng Province City. The wasteland, which was filled with rocks and weeds, looked the same as usual. However, in reality, there were 4 monarch-grade divine arrays set up here. They overlapped and covered a radius of 1,000 miles. The 4 arrays were all high-grade monarch-grade divine arrays, and they were extremely powerful. There were arrays that could conceal one's aura. There was also an array that could confuse and trap people. There was also an array that could seal people and a powerful Berserk Thunder Thousand Swords array. At this moment, the 4 arrays were hidden and they did not reveal any divine power aura. Tianfeng Province Princess and Huan Yu were hiding in the dark night sky. They were hiding in the clouds that were 10,000 feet above the ground. The two of them looked at the northern night sky quietly and waited for the arrival of the Black Dragon and Ji Tianxing. As for the people from the 5 aristocratic families, they were hiding around the array. 3 days ago, in the early morning, the 5 aristocratic families and Tianfeng Province Princess had discussed for more than 2 hours in a secret chamber. No one knew the contents and process of the 6 experts' secret conversation. However, in the end, the 5 aristocratic families agreed to help Tianfeng Province Princess set up an ambush outside the city to kill Ji Tianxing. Each aristocratic family would send 1 middle god and 100 heaven god experts to cooperate with Tianfeng Province Princess and listen to her orders. As for the Commandery Princess Tianfeng personally led 200 elite fighters and Huan Yu followed her into battle. The manpower of the 6 great factions added together was 7 middle-level divine lords and 700 elite expert. With so many middle god experts and heaven god experts, they were extremely powerful. Even if a true high divine lord came, they would also be defeated and fall on the spot. He would not even have the chance to escape. Tianfeng Province Princess was satisfied with this arrangement and she was confident that she could kill Ji Tianxing. The 5 aristocratic families were also confident that they would win. At this moment, the middle god experts from the 5 aristocratic families each led 100 elites and were hiding around the array. The 200 elites from Tianfeng Province Princess were also hiding near the array. They were divided into 6 different directions and they were waiting for Ji Tianxing to come and die. However, at this moment, suddenly, a beam of spiritual light flew towards Princess Tianfeng from the clouds in the sky. Although the beam of spiritual light disappeared in a flash, Tianfeng Province Princess reacted quickly and immediately grabbed the communication jade slip. But this scene still could not escape the probing of a divine lord powerhouse. Apparently, Princess Tianfeng's hiding place had been exposed. He held the communication jade slip in his hand. His face was dark, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Damned idiot! Who is it that is sending me a message at this time? If Tianxing is already nearby, wouldn't I be exposed? As early as an hour ago, he had received news from his spies that Ji Tianxing was about to enter the wilderness. From then on, he ordered several groups of spies not to send any messages within 2 hours. But now, someone had actually disobeyed his orders and sent him a message. Infanta Tianfeng swore to herself that if the person who sent the message was not in a hurry, she would definitely kill him. When Huan Yu, who was hiding in the darkness, saw that she was about to go berserk, he immediately sent a telepathic message to persuade her, "Princess, please calm down. That brat shouldn't be here yet. He might need some time. Furthermore, the scouts do not dare to disobey your orders." Something important must have happened and they had no choice but to send a message. Tianfeng Province Princess suppressed her anger and nodded silently. Then she read the message in the jade slip with her divine sense. The target entered the wilderness. After flying for thousands of miles, they suddenly disappeared. When Tianfeng Province Princess received the message, her body shook and her face stiffened. After a while, she came to herself and was shocked and furious. How could this be? There were spies watching them all the way. They entered the wilderness and were about to fall into the trap. How could they suddenly disappear? These damned idiots. How could they not keep an eye on such a big black dragon? Tianfeng Province Princess was very annoyed. She could not wait to kill all the spies to vent her anger. When she thought of Ji Tianxing, who was tens of thousands of miles away, suddenly disappearing without a trace, she became anxious. A bad premonition arose in his heart. At the same time, Ji Tianxing remained invisible as he traveled through the depths of the underground. Of course, he had seen the spiritual light that flashed in the night sky just now. He guessed that the spies must have panicked when he and the Black Dragon suddenly disappeared. That was why they sent a message to Tianfeng Province Princess. In other words, the dark cloud in the night sky was where Tianfeng Province Princess was hiding. Ji Tianxing did not go to find Tianfeng Province Princess. Tianfeng Province Princess was worried that her position would be exposed, so she must be very vigilant. At the same time, Ji Tianxing's divine sense detected that there were several large arrays in the wilderness, which covered a radius of thousands of miles. Outside the array, there were 6 groups of experts hiding in the depths of the earth. Therefore, he chose the group in the southeast and approached them quietly. They were from the Du family, which was an elixir business. The 100 elite experts were all dressed in black and wore masks on their faces. The leader of the group was a divine master of the Du family, a 5th heaven realm expert. The shelter of these people was the rock layer deep in the ground. The 100 experts were scattered in the rock layer, holding their breaths and not daring to move. Ji Tianxing sneaked into the rock layer like a ghost. When he saw the masked experts sticking to the rock layer like stones, he sneered in his heart. Ha ha! You want to ambush and assassinate people with such little ability? As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianxing secretly used the law of poison and activated the soul-extinguishing poison. 10 wisps of black soul-extinguishing poison gushed out from his fingertips and spread rapidly in the rock layer. The rock layer was pitch black and the soul-extinguishing poison was also pitch black. It was impossible to see it with the naked eye. The divine masters and the masked experts did not dare to use their divine sense and divine power in order to hide their auras. Therefore, no one noticed anything unusual. They also did not know that the god of death had arrived. The pitch-black soul-extinguishing poison quickly spread across the rock layer and filled up the gaps between the rock layer. The mysterious poison ignored everyone's armor, penetrated their divine bodies, and directly killed their godheads. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. After a short 2 breaths of time, death arrived. One after another, the masked experts had their godheads corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison, their divine souls dying on the spot. Even though their bodies and clothes were completely undamaged, without the slightest wound, they were still in a daze. Their divine souls were destroyed, and they lost their consciousness and thoughts. Even if their godheads were still there, they were still alive, but they had already become useless trash. They were no different from rocks and wood. In just 3 breaths of time, the 100 masked experts all lost their divine souls. The Du family's divine master's strength was stronger. Even if he was hit by the soul-extinguishing poison, he could also hold on for a moment. He crawled in the rock layer, holding his head in incomparable pain, his entire body trembling like sifting chaff. Why is this Lord's consciousness so chaotic, Godhead almost exploding? No. There must be a problem. Who ambushed this Lord? The Du family's divine master realized that something was wrong and started to struggle. However, a formless divine power suddenly attacked from behind him, blasting his godhead. Chapter 29:11. Bam! A muffled sound exploded in the Du family's consecrator's mind. His divine soul suffered a heavy blow, and his vision turned black, and he fainted. Following that, an even more turbulent soul-extinguishing poison invaded his divine spark without any restraint. After 2 breaths, his divine soul was completely destroyed. The preserved divine body also lost its thoughts and consciousness, akin to a piece of wood. Only then did the invisible Ji Tianxing appear. He stared at the Du family's consecrator prostrating on the ground, a hint of a cold smile curled at the corners of his mouth. Mirror image law. With a low cry in his heart, he used the mirror image law that he had just condensed not long ago. Swoosh! A black light flashed, and Ji Tianxing became the Du family's consecrator. Regardless of whether it was looks, figure, or temperament, it was completely the same. Even the 2 people's hair number, skin texture, some wounds, and markings on their bodies were completely the same. It was no exaggeration at all. Even if the Du family's patriarch came, he might not be able to distinguish the real from the fake. Indeed interesting. Ji Tianxing looked at the Du family's consecrator, then looked at himself, revealing a hint of a satisfied smile. Following that, he reached out his palm and pressed on the Du family's consecrator's head, quietly unleashing a surge of divine power. Crack! The Du family's consecrator's divine spark was shattered, and he died on the spot. 10 pieces of divine spark fragments wrapped in golden light flew out of the corpse, landing in Ji Tianxing's palm. Ji Tianxing put away the divine spark fragments and quietly groped toward the east. As for those 100 masked experts, he could not be bothered with them for the time being. Anyway, these people lost their divine souls and were no different from blocks of wood. After the battle ended, it would not be too late to deal with them then. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing was like an invisible ghost, shuttling back and forth underground as fast as passing through. After a few breaths, he arrived at the east side of the Grand Array and tunneled into a cave. This last-minute cave was only 1,000 feet in radius. There were 100 celestial deity experts inside, all wearing black armor, with helmets covering their faces. These were the Nangong family's people, all wearing armor forged by the Nangong family, their defense very strong. The one in the lead was a burly man wearing a golden robe. This person's figure was tall and straight like a sword, his aura very sharp. He was the Nangong aristocratic family's head elder, possessing 6th-level divine lord realm strength. The Nangong family was good at refining weapons and had forged all kinds of famous armors and swords. Grand Elder's cultivation method and divine ability were also focused on tempering the body. His body was forged like a divine sword, with a threatening sharpness. Ji Tianxing quietly sneaked into the cave. He used the same trick again and released the surging soul-extinguishing poison. The pitch-black soul-extinguishing poison quickly spread through the cave. The armors and defensive divine artifacts of the heavenly gods were completely useless. In the blink of an eye, many experts were corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison. Their souls quickly dissipated, and before they could even let out a scream, they had become soulless walking corpses. However, there were always exceptions. First Elder Nangong, who was the strongest among them, had just been corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison when a golden bead on her chest lit up with a dazzling golden light. Great Elder Nangong's godhead was corroded by the soul-destroying poison, and he groaned in pain. However, the power of the soul-extinguishing poison was reduced by half by the golden pearl in front of his chest. Therefore, he was only injured and did not fall unconscious. Great Elder Nangong instantly woke up, and his eyes angrily scanned the surroundings. He shouted angrily, "Who is it? Who ambushed me? Damned beast, get the hell out here." Seeing that Great Elder Nangong was still full of strength and was still shouting in the cave, Ji Tianxing was afraid that he would alert the other groups, so he could only appear in a hurry. "Quick, retreat quickly. There's a trap here." He staggered into the cave, his left hand clutching his chest, and his voice was hoarse and intermittent. Whether it was his expression, actions, or voice, he was exactly the same as the Du family's consecrator. Anyone who saw him like this would think that he was heavily injured. Great Elder Nangong was no exception. He turned his head and stared at him, furrowing his brows. "Du family's consecrator? What are you doing? Who hurt you?" Recognizing that it was the Du family's consecrator, Great Elder Nangong relaxed a lot, but he was more confused. Ji Tianxing anxiously rushed in front of him and shouted in a muffled voice, "We've all been tricked. Chishan, old thief." He purposely exposed himself. What a vicious method. As he spoke, Ji Tianxing spat out a mouthful of blood. He seemed to have used up all his strength, as he staggered and fell towards Great Elder Nangong. "What?" Great Elder Nangong's eyes widened, and his heart was filled with shock. Seeing that the Du family's consecrator had fainted, he subconsciously stretched out his arms to support him. At the same time, he anxiously shouted, "Brother, don't faint. Wake up quickly. What is going on? That bastard Count Chishan, what did he do?" The 5 great families and Count Chishan had always been wary of each other, afraid of each other, and restrained each other. Once there was a suitable opportunity, and they did not need to take responsibility, they would not hesitate to get rid of each other. Even if they were working together now, the 5 great families were still wary of Princess Tianfeng. Thus, Great Elder Nangong only wanted to ask Ji Tianxing what Count Chishan was plotting. He completely ignored the fact that the Du family's consecrator in front of him was a fake. Bang! Just as Great Elder Nangong supported Ji Tianxing, he felt a loud explosion in his mind. A formless divine soul energy fiercely hit his godhead, heavily injuring his divine soul. At the same time, the Du family's consecrator, who should have fainted, pulled off the golden pearl he was wearing. Great Elder Nangong's vision turned black, and he staggered back a few steps before falling to the ground. Only now did he realize that the Du family's consecrator was unharmed. He was not injured at all. Moreover, the Du family's consecrator was holding the golden pearl in his hand and looking at him with a cold smile. Hee. I didn't expect you to have such a treasure on you. It can actually block my poison? The Du family's consecrator sneered. Great Elder Nangong immediately felt a chill run down his spine. He glared at the Du family's consecrator and roared, "You damned bastard! You dare to sneak attack me? Why did you do this? Are you not afraid that the Du family will become the target of public criticism?" Until now, Great Elder Nangong still did not see any flaws. He just could not understand why the Du family's consecrator would attack him and ruin the ambush. Was this guy crazy? Was he not afraid of the Nangong family and Count Chishan's revenge? Hee. It's better to be a muddle-headed ghost. Goodbye. Ji Tianxing sneered, and once again sent out divine soul energy towards Great Elder Nangong's head. Pfff. Great Elder Nangong opened his mouth and spat out blood. His eyes were filled with anger as he fell straight to the ground. His divine soul was heavily injured, shattered, and corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison, dissipating in the blink of an eye. Even if his godhead and body were intact, it was useless. Ji Tianxing strode over and struck his head with his palm, shattering his godhead. After taking out his godhead fragment, Ji Tianxing used the mirror image law and changed his appearance. Then, using Great Elder Nangong's appearance, he quickly ran towards the group in the northeast corner. Chapter 29:12. In the northeast corner of the formation, there was also a middle-level divine monarch and 100 divine realm experts. They were the Shong family, a merchant that dealt in salt and iron. The leader was the Grand Elder of the Shong family, the grandfather of the current family head. People called him Old Ancestor Shong. This old man was dressed in a blue robe and had a white beard that reached his chest. His body was as thin as firewood, but his aura was as strong as a mountain. He was also a 5th-level divine monarch expert and had cultivated the withered wood true technique to the peak. At this moment, he was standing in the crack in the ground, frowning as he looked in the direction of the Nangong family. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Almost 100 elite experts in grey robes and masks were lurking in the cracks below the ground, waiting for orders with their sabers and swords in hand. The guard captain approached Old Ancestor Shong and asked respectfully, "Old Ancestor, there seems to be a problem with the Nangong family. Do you want me to go down and take a look?" Old Ancestor Shong waved his hand and said in a dignified tone, "No need. The princess hasn't given the order to attack yet, so the target probably hasn't appeared yet. As for the Nangong family, if they cause any trouble, the princess will take care of them. We just need to do our part." Before he finished speaking, his divine sense detected a burly man in a golden robe flying underground. It was a divine lord powerhouse. It was none other than Great Elder Nangong. He was rushing over in a hurry. Old Ancestor Shong immediately shut his mouth and stared at Great Elder Nangong vigilantly, locking onto his aura. A familiar figure and face, as well as a familiar aura of the divine soul. Old Ancestor Shong muttered in his heart, "It's really him. What is this little brat doing here in this old man's place?" In the blink of an eye, Great Elder Nangong entered the crack in the ground and arrived in front of Old Ancestor Shong. Although it was dark underground, there was no light. Old Ancestor Shong could see that Great Elder Nangong's hair was disheveled and his chest was stained with blood. Old Ancestor Shong's heart tightened as he had a bad premonition. "Little Nangong, what happened?" Old Ancestor Shong stared at him with a sharp gaze. Although he seemed to be concerned, he was secretly on guard. Great Elder Nangong was very tactful. He stopped 100 steps away from Old Ancestor Shong. He raised his blood-stained face and roared in a hoarse voice, "Old Ancestor Shong, quickly activate the formation, that brat is already here. Just now, that brat used a secret technique to kill the experts under my command. I exchanged a few blows with him and was injured by him. I was lucky enough to escape and warn him." Great Elder Nangong sounded very anxious as blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. Of course, Old Ancestor Shong didn't suspect anything. He just asked in disbelief, "What? The target is already here? Why didn't Count Chishan notice? Why didn't he give the order to attack? Is that kid's strength and methods really so terrifying?" Great Elder Nangong was very anxious and did not have the patience to answer so many questions. He growled, "It's true. Otherwise, why would I be injured? Quickly inform the others to work together to activate the formation. Otherwise, it will be too late." After saying that, Great Elder Nangong was about to pass through the crack to inform the other group of people. Old Ancestor Shong didn't have time to think and he quickly dissuaded Zhongyu, "You don't have to inform them personally, I can just send a voice transmission to them. If you stay here, this old man can take care of you in case that brat sneak attacks." This was exactly what Great Elder Nangong wanted. He stayed in the crack and stood beside Old Ancestor Shong. He quickly took out an elixir and consumed it to heal his injuries. Old Ancestor Shong didn't waste any time and immediately used his divine sense to inform the people of the other two families. The people of the Cheng family and the Lu family were lying in ambush at the south and west of the formation. The two leading monarchs were the Cheng family's consecrator and the Lu family's great elder. Old Ancestor Shong sent a voice transmission to the two of them and told them that the situation was urgent and that they had to activate the formation immediately. The Cheng family's consecrator and the Lu family's great elder also noticed that something seemed to have happened at the Nangong family's hiding place. After hearing Old Ancestor Shong's voice transmission, they suddenly understood and nodded in agreement without hesitation. Hence, Old Ancestor Shong, the Cheng family's consecrator and the Lu family's great elder simultaneously used their divine power to activate the formation together. Swoosh, swoosh. As the three of them sent out countless divine seals, the originally calm wasteland lit up with dazzling divine light. A multicolored light barrier immediately appeared in the night sky, enveloping an area of 1,000 miles. Immediately after, another dark golden canopy rapidly expanded. During this process, the three monarchs had to be fully focused and give it their all. Only then could they activate the four formations in the shortest time possible. Old Ancestor Shong was so focused on casting that he completely ignored the Nangong family's great elder behind him. Two of the formations had been successfully activated and the third formation had just lit up with divine light. At this moment, the back of Old Ancestor Shong's head was suddenly hit and there was an explosion in his mind. His vision turned black and he couldn't help but open his mouth and spit out a mouthful of blood. An extremely violent divine power fiercely hit his godhead, causing his divine soul to be severely injured and his consciousness to become blurry. His casting was interrupted and Old Ancestor Shong staggered as he turned around and glared at the Nangong family's great elder. "You bastard! Why did you sneak an attack on me? Do you want to die?" Old Ancestor Shong clearly remembered that the Nangong family's great elder was severely injured and had just taken an elixir to heal himself. Why didn't he look like he was severely injured? Although the Shong family and the Nangong family had a grudge, they wouldn't go so far as to kill him. Old Ancestor Shong couldn't understand why the Nangong family's great elder would attack him. The Nangong family's great elder remained silent and quickly raised his palms to release a pitch-black soul-extinguishing poison. The surging poisonous gas immediately spread through the cracks in the ground and spread rapidly. Hundreds of elite experts noticed that Old Ancestor Shong had been sneak attacked and hurriedly charged towards the Nangong family's great elder. However, they only managed to fly a few feet before their godheads were corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison. Their divine souls were severely injured and their vision turned black as their consciousness fell into darkness. Plop, plop. Following a series of muffled sounds, the experts fell into the depths of the cracks like dumplings. Their divine souls were all destroyed and they became walking corpses without any thoughts of their own. Old Ancestor Shong's divine soul was already injured and he was corroded by the soul-extinguishing poison. He instantly fell into a coma. Before he fainted, a thought flashed across his mind and he suddenly realized something. You are Tianxing. Old ancestor Shong finally guessed the truth. However, it was a pity that he no longer had the chance to tell this secret to others. The Nangong family's great elder rushed forward and slapped old ancestor Shong's head, shattering his godhead into pieces. The Shong family's great elder who had lived for 20,000 years died just like that. When the Nangong family's great elder retracted his palm, there were still 9 godhead fragments in his palm. He quickly kept the godhead fragments and used the law of mirror image to transform into old ancestor Shong. As for old ancestor Shong's corpse, he casually shot out a divine flame and burned it into ashes. Old ancestor Shong glanced at the cracks in the ground and only retracted his gaze when he saw that the hundreds of experts were all dead. He quickly passed through the cracks and flew towards the Cheng family. Chapter 29:13. The Cheng family's great elder and the Lu family's great elder realized that something was amiss. Grand Elder Shong told them that their target had arrived and had attacked Grand Elder Nangong. However, when the 3 of them were in the process of activating the array, Grand Elder Shong was attacked and stopped casting his spell. The Cheng family's great elder and the Lu family's great elder realized that Grand Elder Shong had also been attacked by Tianxing. The 2 of them released their divine senses to check the crack in the ground where the Shong family members were. Immediately, they saw hundreds of enlightened gods lying motionlessly in the crack with their divine souls shattered. Even old ancestor Shong's corpse was engulfed in golden divine flames and soon turned into ashes. Seeing this, the Cheng family's great elder and the Lu family's great elder were shocked. The 2 of them stopped casting spells and quickly led their subordinates out of the ground and into the night sky. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, 2 groups of people appeared in the night sky and were on high alert. The area within 1,000 miles was sealed by the 2 arrays. Everyone had their backs against the sealing formation as they vigilantly scanned their surroundings. They believed that their target was somewhere near the array. However, they were not sure if their target was outside the array or trapped inside the array. The most important thing now was to find their target and kill him. At this moment, a divine light shone in the northern night sky. Close to 200 heavenly god experts also quickly spread out and lined up along the sealing formation. These were the experts from the princess's residence. They were all armed with weapons and were on high alert. However, Princess Tianfeng and Huanyu did not appear. The Cheng family's great elder's face turned pale. He hesitated for a moment before asking the Lu family's great elder. Senior Lu, why is Princess Tianfeng not here? The target is hiding in the dark and we can't detect his aura within 1,000 miles. What should we do? The Lu family's great elder had the same doubts and concerns. He pondered for a moment before replying, the target is powerful and his methods are strange. We can't guard against him. The only thing we can do now is not to act on our own and not to trust anyone easily. We have to be alert and stay in formation. The target is impatient and will attack us soon. Upon hearing this, the Cheng clan's honorary elder felt that Lu Li's words made a lot of sense. He hurriedly replied, Senior Lu, you're right. We'll do as you say. Even though the 5 aristocratic families competed with each other and had grudges with the princess's manor. However, the Cheng clan and the Lu clan had been in an alliance for over 100 years. They had been working together to fight against other forces, so they trusted each other a lot. The 2 groups of people remained in their original positions, ready to attack. Once the target appeared, they would attack with all their might. However, it was a pity that the night sky was completely silent and there was nothing out of the ordinary. 15 minutes had passed, but the target did not appear. Neither did Princess Tianfeng and Huanyu. The Grand Elder of the Lu family sensed that something was not right. He sent a telepathic message to the Cheng family consecrator, this is not good. Why didn't anyone from the Nangong, Du, and Shong family appear? Not only were 300 experts killed, but even 3 divine monarchs died. The Cheng family's consecrator also realized this problem. His heart tightened as he replied via voice transmission, it seems that the people from the 3 aristocratic families have already met with misfortune. He was just a young guardian from Qingshan City. Did he really have such terrifying strength and means? Senior Lu, why do I feel that there is something fishy about this? The Grand Elder of the Lu family remained silent for a while before replying via voice transmission. It is indeed fishy. No matter how powerful that kid is, it is impossible for him to kill all the people from the 3 aristocratic families without anyone noticing. Unless this is a plot by Princess Tianfeng, that little bastard Tianxing is actually one of his men. They have joined forces to put on a show to harm the 5 aristocratic families. As long as they get rid of us, Princess Tianfeng will be able to dominate the north and become the real governor. Moreover, he can push the blame to Tianxing. He will be the one who benefits from this and will not have to bear the consequences. One had to admit that the Grand Elder of the Lu family was very imaginative. The Cheng family's consecrator was also shocked by his words. He exclaimed in disbelief, This is impossible. How could Princess Tianfeng be so deranged? The Grand Elder of the Lu family said in a low voice, In this world where the strong prey on the weak, as long as it involves benefits, nothing is impossible. It is always good for us to be cautious. The Cheng family's consecrator accepted his words and said in a serious tone, If that is the case, not only do we have to guard against Tianxing's sneak attack, but we also have to guard against Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu. Just as he finished his sentence, in the darkness a few hundred miles away, there was a faint black shadow that was charging towards them at lightning speed. Swoosh! After 2 breaths of time, the black shadow flew close to the Cheng clan and headed straight for them. The Cheng family's consecrator's divine sense immediately locked onto the black shadow. He gripped his divine saber tightly and was ready to strike. Stop right there! The Cheng family's consecrator shouted when he saw that the black shadow looked familiar. The black shadow stopped and stood a few hundred feet away from him, panting heavily. Little brother, run! This is a plot. We have all been fooled by Earl Chishan. The black shadow's voice was old and hoarse. It was filled with anxiety and anger. The Cheng family's consecrator finally saw that the black shadow was a skinny old man with a white beard. It was Patriarch Shong. His chest and face were stained with blood. His hair was disheveled and he was in a sorry state. The Cheng family's consecrator was shocked. A thought flashed across his mind. Wasn't Patriarch Shong killed and his body burned to ashes? How could he still be alive? Why did he warn me? At the thought of this, the Cheng family's consecrator wanted to expose the other party. However, he was cautious. He sent a telepathic message to the Grand Elder of the Lu family for help. At the same time, he asked Patriarch Shong, Senior Shong, why are you so severely injured? Who was it that injured you? Could it be that you were attacked by Tianxing? Patriarch Shong panted weakly. He waved his hand and said, No. There were 2 people who attacked me. One was Tianxing and the other was Huan Yu. The Cheng family's consecrator's eyes shrunk. He said in shock, How could Huan Yu? I understand now. Do you mean that Tianxing and Infanta Tianfeng are in cahoots? Patriarch Shong nodded and said, That's right. This is Count Chishan's conspiracy. It's a conspiracy against the 5 aristocratic families. The Cheng family's consecrator comforted him. Patriarch Shong, don't worry. We will protect you. Let's work together to deal with Princess Tianfeng. Following his words, the Grand Elder of the Lu family flew across the night sky and came to his side. Not far away, hundreds of experts from the Lu family rushed over at lightning speed. Patriarch Shong heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the Cheng family and the Lu family had gathered. He quickly flew over. My injuries are too severe. I need to recuperate for a while. Please take care of me. Patriarch Shong flew to the Cheng family's consecrator. He kept a distance of 100 steps and was about to meditate to recuperate. The Cheng family's consecrator and the Lu family's Grand Elder looked at each other and were about to take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. At this moment, 9 black light blades descended from the dark night sky and pierced towards Patriarch Shong. Another burly figure appeared and slashed out a giant sword that was 100 feet long towards Great Ancestor Shong's head. Chapter 29:14. The sudden turn of events shocked the Great Elder of the Cheng family and the Great Elder of the Lu family. The 2 of them looked up at the night sky and saw Princess Tianfeng charging toward them with a divine sword in her hand. The other blurry figure was still releasing pitch-black light blades. Needless to say, the blurry figure was Huan Yu. Princess Qianfeng and Huan Yu had finally appeared. The two of them attacked at the same time, and their target was Patriarch Shang. The great elder of the Cheng family and the great elder of the Lu family were even more certain that they were right. The person with the problem was Patriarch Shang. The two of them brandished their swords and sabers without hesitation and used their super skills to attack Patriarch Shang. Moon falling, heavenly rainbow. 9 extremes, true emperor slash. The super skills of the 4 Sir gods turned into a sky full of divine skill light shadows and engulfed Patriarch Shang. The night sky within a few hundred miles was illuminated in a dazzling brilliance. The majestic divine power that could suppress heaven and earth and the saber light and sword shadows that could crush everything were about to kill Patriarch Shang. At this critical moment, Patriarch Shang, who seemed to be severely injured, had a chilling look in his eyes. The same trick won't work after 3 consecutive times. What a pity. As this thought flashed across his mind, he teleported a few hundred miles away and entered the 2 arrays. The overwhelming divine skill light shadows hit the array light shield and let out a deafening explosion. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the seal array within 1,000 miles shook violently from the bombardment and let out a dazzling light. However, these 2 arrays were of a higher grade and their defensive power was very strong. The 4 Sir gods' full force attack only created a few cracks on the array light shield and did not destroy it. Patriarch Shang, who had escaped into the array light shield, was naturally safe and sound. Everyone was stunned for a moment before they came to their senses. They were pleasantly surprised and pleased. Ha ha ha. That guy was forced into a corner and fell into the trap himself. The real Patriarch Shang is dead. That Patriarch Shang must be an imposter. That guy had been hiding in the dark and thinking of ways to attack us. Now that he has entered the array light shield, he is definitely going to die. It's a pity that only 2 great formations have been activated, so they might not have much destructive power. If all 4 great formations are activated, that guy is dead for sure. The 4 Sir gods and the many experts were whispering to each other as they discussed. While everyone was pleasantly surprised and excited, they also felt some regret and pity. Currently, the 2 major formations that were activated were the Sealing Formation and the Illusory Formation. Once they entered the formation, they would lose their sense of direction and be sealed within. It would be extremely difficult for them to escape. If the other 2 killing arrays were activated, they would be able to release even more terrifying killing power. At the thought of this, Princess Qianfeng hurriedly ordered, Cheng clan's consecrator, Lu clan's grand elder, lead your men to control the formation and seal the fake Patriarch Shang. Huan Yu and I will work together to activate the other 2 formations. The Cheng clan's consecrator hesitated for a moment before turning to look at the Lu clan's grand elder. Because of what Princess Qianfeng had said, the Cheng clan's consecrated elder didn't trust her enough. Under such circumstances, he only dared to trust the first elder of the Lu clan. The first elder of the Lu clan gave him a look and cupped his fists at Princess Qianfeng. He said, Princess Qianfeng, if that Patriarch Shang is a fake, it is most likely Tianqing in disguise. This proves that Patriarch Shang has already been killed. Apart from the Shang clan, the Du clan and the Nangong clan have also met with misfortune. This shows that Tianqing's strength and means are far beyond our expectations. Now, only the 2 of us and the princess residents are left. It will be difficult for us to deal with that guy. Of course, Princess Qianfeng understood what the first elder of the Lu clan meant. With a stern look, she said, that guy has already entered our trap. What's so difficult about it? I didn't ask you to enter the array light shield to kill him. I only asked you to control the array light shield to suppress him. How could the first elder of the Lu clan agree? With a determined look, he said, Princess Qianfeng, I understand what you mean. However, the fact is that the guy has already killed people from the 3 aristocratic families. Not only 300 experts, but even 3 Sir gods have been killed by him. The disciples of the Lu clan and the Cheng clan have risked our lives to help you. If we were not careful, we would have lost our lives. Princess Qianfeng, shouldn't you be more sympathetic to us? Otherwise, how could we risk our lives to help you? Obviously, This was a last-minute increase in price. Otherwise, they would have quit. Princess Tianfeng had spent so much effort and paid such a high price to get to this point. How could she give up now? Even though she was burning with anger and gritting her teeth, she could only say, "Fine, I will sympathize with you. I will double the price that we agreed on earlier. Are you satisfied?" The first elder of the Lu clan and the honorary elder of the Cheng clan smiled and nodded. Princess Tianfeng is indeed magnanimous. We will do our best to help you. With that, the two of them did not waste any more time. They quickly led their subordinates to control the array light shield. Buzz! As more than 200 people released their divine power and poured it into the divine array, the light shield within a radius of 1,000 miles shone brightly. The power of the array light shield increased by more than 3 times. The invisible suppressive force froze the space within the array light shield. Even Sir Gods could not move. On top of that, the power of the confusion array light shield increased by several times. Even a middle-level Sir God would be lost in the illusory array and would not be able to escape. Although this would not cause much harm to Patriarch Shong, it would still be able to trap him. However, it was able to trap him inside and continuously weaken his strength. Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu made use of this opportunity to activate the other 2 killing arrays. The process was slow and would take at least 20 breaths of time. Of course, everyone was confident in the other 2 killing arrays. Everyone believed that Tian Xing had been suppressed by the Matrix. It was difficult for him to move and he could not escape. In just 20 breaths of time, Princess Tianfeng would be able to activate the last 2 killing arrays. At that time, Tianhang's doomsday would arrive. Time passed quickly. 3 breaths, 5 breaths, 10 breaths. Soon, 15 breaths of time passed. Everything was normal. Princess Tianfeng and Huan Yu were not disturbed and were trying their best to activate the killing arrays. However, at the 16th breaths of time, something strange happened. An earth-shattering sound suddenly came from the golden light shield within a radius of 1,000 miles. Boom! Crack! A huge crack appeared on the golden light shield and countless shards of divine light flew out. A blurry black shadow shot out from the killing arrays and engulfed the members of the Cheng family with a dark green fog. More than 100 elites were immediately engulfed by the dark green fog and screams of agony could be heard. Everyone's flesh and skin started to fester and turn into black blood that flowed on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the elites were corroded and turned into skeletons. They fell to the ground. Even their godheads were corroded by the dark soul-destroying poison and cracks started to appear on their godheads. Their souls were destroyed by the poison. These heavenly deity experts all fainted, no longer breathing. Chapter 29:15. In just 2 seconds, all the elites of the Cheng family had been crippled. All of them were reduced to skeletons, their godheads were severely damaged, and their divine souls were destroyed. Even the Cheng family's official was sent flying by the black shadow. He fell to the ground with blood gushing out of his 7 orifices. When he got up and flew into the sky, he found that his legs had been corroded by the dark green mist. Black blood dripped from them, and only his bones were left. The heart-wrenching pain caused him to suck in a breath of cold air. He subconsciously shouted, "Deadly poison! It's poison!" There was no doubt that the dark green mist was the blood-dissolving poison. It could corrode the flesh of living beings in a short time. Other than the blood-dissolving poison, there was also the soul-destroying poison. However, the soul-destroying poison was black and not obvious in the night sky. That was why everyone ignored it. As the official of the Cheng family screamed, the blood-dissolving poison quickly spread through his body. The soul-destroying poison also entered his body and corroded his godhead. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his godhead. His divine soul became blurry and he almost fainted. Puff! The official of the Cheng family spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked and ran away without looking back. At the same time, the Grand Elder of the Lu family and the Infanta Princess of Tianfeng also saw the black shadow dashing out of the array and releasing the deadly poison. Immediately, the divine senses of the 3 divine lord powerhouses locked onto the black figure. The 300 elites waved their swords and attacked the black shadow. Seeing this, Princess Tianfeng was horrified. She quickly ordered, "Stop. Back off. Don't touch the poison." He had seen hundreds of people of the Cheng family being corroded into skeletons with his own eyes. How could he let his men die? Unfortunately, the blood-dissolving poison and the soul-destroying poison spread too quickly. When the 300 elites sensed the danger, it was too late for them to run away. Whoosh! The dark green and black poison spread out like a storm and covered a radius of 200 miles. More than 200 elites were immediately swallowed by the two types of poison. In the thick, dark green fog, extremely miserable roars and shouts rang out crazily. One by one, the divine realm elites were corroded and turned into skeletons. Then, their divine souls were also destroyed by the poison. They lost their minds and consciousness and fell to the ground. In less than 3 breaths, the dark green mist became quiet again. More than 260 elites were completely destroyed and turned into skeletons on the ground. The remaining 30 or so people fled as if their lives depended on it. They managed to escape the corrosive effects of the poison. The Grand Elder of the Lu clan, Princess Tianfeng, and Huanyu also used their mystiques to resist the corrosive effects of the 2 deadly poisons. The 3 of them were on guard and resisted with all their might, so they didn't suffer much damage. But the official of the Cheng family. Just as he fled 100 miles away, the black shadow caught up with him. He could only see it clearly when he got closer. In the blurry shadow, there was a skinny white-haired old man. It was Old Ancestor Shong. Grand Ancestor Shong's left hand shot out a ball of 5-colored lightning that shot towards the Cheng family's consecrator like a cannonball. He waved a pitch-black divine sword in his right hand, and a ball of dazzling golden light shot out like a scorching sun. The sinecure of Cheng clan was poisoned by the blood-dissolving poison and the soul-destroying poison. Not only was the lower half of his body corroded into white bones, even his soul was severely wounded, and his consciousness was blurred. Seeing the 5-colored lightning and the golden sun coming at him, he wanted to teleport away, but it was too late. At the moment of life and death, he could only erupt with his strongest power and condense a law shield to protect himself. 9 types of law powers mixed together to form a 5-colored oval shield. The defensive power of this shield was comparable to a monarch-level middle-grade divine artifact. The Cheng family's consecrator prayed that the shield would be able to block the attack. He hoped that the Lu clan's elder, Princess Tianfeng, and Huanyu would hurry over to kill Old Ancestor Shong. Only then could he escape with his life. However, his hopes were shattered on the spot. Boom! The 5-colored lightning struck the law shield, causing an earth-shattering boom to erupt. 5 different types of divine lightning erupted with the most violent and terrifying power, directly shattering the law barrier. Thousands of multicolored shards shot out in all directions, illuminating the night sky for thousands of kilometers. In the next moment, the golden sun struck the Cheng family's consecrator. Bam! In the earth-shattering boom, the golden sun exploded, causing a huge mushroom cloud to rise in the night sky. At this moment, the golden light within a 100-mile radius soared into the night sky, as though the real sun had descended. The body of the Cheng family's consecrator was blown to smithereens, leaving not even a complete bone behind. Even his godhead had been blasted into 12 pieces and scattered all over the wasteland. Another middle-level Sir God had fallen. Old Ancestor Shong immediately turned around, holding the pitch-black divine sword, and charged toward Princess Tianfeng and the rest. At this time, the 30 or so surviving elites had already fled in all directions. Only Princess Tianfeng, the Lu clan's Grand Elder, and Huanyu were left near the broken seal. Swoosh! The 3 Sir Gods flew across the night sky and were about to chase after Old Ancestor Shong. Seeing that Old Ancestor Shong had returned, the 3 of them did not chase after him. Instead, they spread out and surrounded him. Princess Tianfeng held the dark golden divine sword in her hand as she stared at Old Ancestor Shong with bloodshot eyes. Her body exuded a murderous aura, causing her hair to dance in the wind. Huanyu was wearing a black robe and a cloak that covered his face. He stood quietly in the night sky, as though he had become one with the darkness. The Lu clan's Grand Elder held a long saber and stared at Old Ancestor Shong with a sharp gaze. The 4 Sir Gods faced each other in the night sky, but none of them made the first move. After a moment of silence, Princess Tianfeng was the first to speak. She shouted angrily, "Tianqing, you despicable, vicious bastard. Why don't you show your true form?" Old Ancestor Shong sneered and said with disdain, "Earl Chishan, are you blind? Or are you out of your mind? I am the old ancestor of the Shong family. Can't you tell?" Hearing this, Princess Tianfeng frowned and used her divine sense to observe him. The Lu clan's Grand Elder and Huanyu also used their divine sense to check his identity. Unfortunately, the three of them could not find any loopholes. The old ancestor of the Shong family in front of them was more real than real. Huanyu asked coldly, "Old ancestor of the Shong family, you are a person of virtue and prestige. How can you be on the same side as that bastard Tianqing? I don't understand why the Shong family is going against the princess residence." Old Ancestor Shong stroked his white beard and sneered. "You are a useless princess. Be it in terms of strength, scheming, or tactics, you are all suppressed by Mr. Tianqing. If the Shong family succumbs to you, not only will they not gain any benefits, they will also be restrained. However, if I work with Mr. Tianqing, we can kill all of you. By then, the Shong family will be the strongest in Tianfeng City and will definitely become the new princess. Even if the king investigates and finds out that all of you were killed by Mr. Tianqing, what does it have to do with the Shong family? The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Can't you understand such a simple logic?" End of chapter. Chapter 29:16. Patriarch Shong's words were clear and logical. Not only was Princess Tianfeng stunned, but even the Lu family's Grand Elder was shocked. Just a moment ago, he even reminded the Cheng family's minister not to trust anyone easily, including Princess Tianfeng. He even suspected that Princess Tianfeng had colluded with Tianqing to put on this show. They wanted to get rid of the 5 big families, dominate Tianfeng County, and become the governor. Moreover, they wanted to push all the blame to Tianqing. It had nothing to do with Princess Tianfeng. The Lu family's Grand Elder had the same idea as Patriarch Shong. The only difference was that this despicable schemer was Princess Tianfeng or the Shong family. Obviously, the Lu family's Grand Elder believed it. However, he did not have the chance to get to know Tianqing. If he did, he would be more than happy to work with Tianqing to get rid of Princess Tianfeng and the other 4 big families. By then, the Lu family would be the most powerful family in Tianfeng County, and it would not be difficult for Princess Tianfeng to become the new princess. The benefits belonged to the Lu family, and the blame belonged to Tianqing. How perfect! Princess Tianfeng also knew that the Lu family's Grand Elder would think this way. She had even thought about how to get rid of the 5 big families more than once. Therefore, she was not surprised that Patriarch Shong colluded with Tianqing. The 4 divine emperors were silent. Infanta Tianfeng stared at Grand Ancestor Shong with sharp eyes. Suddenly, she sneered and said, "Grand Ancestor Shong, you are a despicable person who doesn't die because of old age. I am curious, when did you get in touch with Tianqing and talk about cooperation?" "Ha ha ha." Patriarch Shong sneered and said, "Opportunities are always given to those who are prepared." It was a specious answer. It seemed that he had answered Princess Tianfeng's question, but he did not say anything. Princess Tianfeng was not satisfied and continued to ask, "There is no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. Have you thought about the consequences of doing this? By then, not only will the Shong family be executed by the emperor, but they will also go down in history in infamy." Patriarch Shong seemed to have lost his patience. He sneered again and said, "I will kill all the people who participated in tonight's battle. Who else can leak the news? All right, you don't have to stall for time. Everything should be over now." As soon as he finished speaking, Grand Ancestor Shong's left palm shot out a dark purple fog that covered the sky and earth, while his right hand waved the sword and slashed out hundreds of sword lights. Shua! In the blink of an eye, the dark purple fog that covered the sky and covered an area of 200 miles. Hundreds of 5-colored sword radiances, carrying the power of 50 laws, slashed toward Princess Tianfeng and her 2 companions. Seeing this, the Lu clan's Grand Elder suddenly realized something. He growled, "No. He wasn't old Ancestor Shong. Grand Ancestor Shong isn't good at using poison, and his attainments in the sword Dao aren't as amazing as this. Moreover, he had used his divine consciousness to check that old ancestor Shong's body had already turned into ashes. Therefore, he was certain that this old ancestor Shong was a fake. He was Tianxing in disguise. However, it was a pity that the dark purple fog and sword lights had already arrived in front of him. The Grand Elder of the Lu clan could only use his ultimate skill to block the sword light and poison mist with all his might. Princess Tianfeng also saw through this and guessed that he was not the real Shong clan Grand Elder. But it was too late now. Shua. The dark purple fog poured down and turned the area of 200 miles into scorched earth. More than 30 sword radiances came toward him. The sword essence suppressed his divine power and greatly reduced his combat strength. At this critical moment, there was no time for him to escape. He could only wave his golden sword to block the attack. Bang, bang, bang. In the deafening sound, Princess Tianfeng was sent flying by the sword radiances. While she was still in the air, she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her internal organs were severely injured, and her defense was weakened again. The dark purple mist that followed him like a shadow immediately invaded his body and spread at an extremely fast speed. Crack, crack. In the blink of an eye, Princess Tianfeng's left arm and chest were corroded by the poison. Her skin, flesh, blood, meridians, and bones were all turned into black debris and scattered in the night sky. This was the violent poison. It was extremely violent and could destroy all targets in the shortest time possible. Princess Tianfeng couldn't help but scream in pain. However, her internal organs and throat had been corroded by the poison and she couldn't make any sound. What was more frightening was that the poison was spreading up her neck and was about to corrode her brain and godhead. Princess Tianfeng was terrified and her heart was filled with fear. She didn't dare to stay any longer. She turned around and fled toward Tianfeng City without hesitation. On the other side, the Lu family's Grand Elder and Huanyu were also in a miserable state. Both of them were pushed back by the 5-colored sword radiances and were sent flying for more than 10 miles. While their internal organs were injured, the dark purple poison took advantage of this opportunity to invade their bodies. Their limbs were corroded by the poison. Their flesh, skin, and bones were all charred and shattered. The heart-wrenching pain caused them to convulse and groan in pain. They couldn't be bothered to fight back. Instead, they quickly circulated their energy to stop the poison from spreading. However, Patriarch Shong swung his sword again and used an even more violent sword technique. Shua, shua, shua. The giant sword slashed down with a force that could split the heavens and earth. It suppressed the Lu family's Grand Elder and rendered him immobile. Kaboom! With a deafening sound, the Lu family's Grand Elder was smashed into pieces by the giant sword. Blood splattered everywhere. The pieces of his body fell on the wasteland and were quickly corroded into ashes by the dark purple poison. Even his godhead was sliced into more than 10 pieces and scattered among the wasteland. The Lu family's Grand Elder died on the spot. Huanyu didn't last long either. He was shrouded by more than 300 sword radiances and was shredded into pieces. Soon, the pieces of flesh were charred and turned into fine powder when the wind blew. The pieces of the godhead fell to the ground and were caught by Patriarch Shong. Huanyu also died on the spot. Patriarch Shong couldn't be bothered to collect his spoils of war. He sprinted toward Tianfeng City and chased after Princess Tianfeng. Swoosh! Princess Tianfeng ran with all her might. She was like a bolt of lightning that streaked across the night sky. She fled toward the North City gate at her fastest speed. She was running for her life with all her might. Naturally, she couldn't stop the poison from spreading in her body. When she was 20,000 miles away, half of her body had been corroded by the poison and was charred black. Moreover, her mind was also corroded by the poison. The power of her godhead was greatly damaged and her divine soul was becoming blurry. She was running at a much slower speed and her strength was fading rapidly. Tianfeng City was just 3,000 miles away. Princess Tianfeng had a strong desire to live and she ran at all costs. There was only one thought in her mind. As long as I get back to the city guards and experts will be able to hold him back. Then, I will have a chance. However, Just when Princess Qianfeng was 2,000 miles away from the North City Gate, she felt an extremely sharp sword essence behind her. Princess Qianfeng didn't need to turn her head. She could see it with her divine senses. A giant five-colored sword that was thousands of feet long slashed down toward his head with a godly might that could annihilate everything. No. Princess Qianfeng roared in her heart. She held the dark golden divine sword with both hands and blocked above her head. Kaboom! There was an earth-shattering sound of thunder. Princess Qianfeng was hit by the giant sword. She fell from the night sky and crashed into the wasteland. End of chapter. Chapter 29:17. Kaboom! A muffled explosion reverberated across a few thousand miles. A 10,000 feet deep crater appeared in the wasteland, kicking up a cloud of dust. The ground within 1,000 miles shook violently, and countless cracks appeared around the crater. Princess Qianfeng, whose body was half-burnt, lay at the bottom of the crater, half buried in the mud. After suffering such a heavy blow, although he managed to preserve his life was in danger. The poison that had invaded his body had already corroded half of his brain. 30% of his five-colored godhead had also been corroded, and it had become pitch black. Princess Qianfeng's eyes were hazy, and her power was weak and chaotic. It would be difficult for her to continue fighting. However, her desire to live was too strong, and she would not give up so easily. Swish! She used the law of earth to merge with the rocks and continued to run toward the North City Gate. Ancestral Patriarch Shong frowned as he sensed the situation, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Solidify. He formed a spell with his left hand and used the law of earth to control the area within a 3,000-mile radius. Following his cold shout, the soil and rock in the area 200 miles ahead of him directly solidified into metal. Bang! Princess Qianfeng, who was running away, bumped into the dark golden metal block. She was a bit dazed by the impact, and she flew back 1,000 feet before she adjusted her direction and continued to run. At this moment, the divine power within a few hundred miles was sucked out. A huge dark golden palm emerged from the ground and caught hold of Princess Qianfeng in an instant. Swish! A golden light flashed. The dark golden palm flew out of the ground and streaked across the dark night sky, returning to Grand Ancestor Shong. Princess Qianfeng, who only had half of her body left, was held tightly by the giant hand and could no longer move. Even her divine power and divine sense were sealed by an invisible force. She was like a fish on a chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Princess Qianfeng was in complete despair. Ancestral Patriarch Shong looked down at her and asked calmly, "Count Chishan, how do you feel now?" Princess Qianfeng's eyes were bloodshot as she stared at him with hatred. "I only regret that I didn't work with the Blood Sword sect to sneak into Green Mountain City and kill you." Unfortunately, her divine body was damaged and she could not make a sound. His severely injured divine soul was also sealed, preventing him from using his divine soul voice. Old Ancestor Shong continued, "I know that you must be very aggrieved. After all, you're about to lose your life, but you haven't even seen my true face." Princess Qianfeng immediately stopped struggling and stared at him with her bloodshot eyes. Indeed, this was the most humiliating thing he had ever done. They had suffered such heavy losses and were on the brink of death, but they hadn't even seen the true face of their opponent. Was there anything worse than this? However, old Ancestor Shong had no intention of revealing his true form. He grinned and said, "Don't be delusional. A weak opponent like you is not qualified to see this monarch's true face." Princess Qianfeng was so humiliated that she almost exploded on the spot. However, he no longer had the chance to think about it. Old Ancestor Shong manipulated the dark golden palm and squeezed a few times in an incomparably barbaric manner. With a cracking sound, half of Princess Qianfeng's body was crushed into pieces. A half-black, half-colored godhead fell into the giant golden palm. Old Ancestor Shong slapped the godhead again and crushed it into pieces. The dignified Princess Qianfeng, the Honorable Count Chishan, died in such an aggrieved manner. Old Ancestor Shong kept the godhead fragment and picked up the dark golden divine sword that had fallen into the ruins. He turned and flew away. Swoosh! When he returned to more than 20,000 miles away, the poisonous fog that had pervaded the area around the dilapidated array had disappeared. Everything returned to normal. Apart from the white bones and the ruins that covered thousands of miles, there was no one left alive. At this moment, old ancestor Shong had returned to his original appearance. He was an 8-foot tall, handsome young man from the human clan. His robe was whiter than snow, and his long hair fluttered in the wind. It was Ji Tianxing. He released his divine consciousness and covered thousands of miles around him as he began to clean up the battlefield. Soon, he found the godhead fragments and interspatial rings that were scattered in the ruins one by one. He even found a few monarch-grade divine artifacts. These few divine artifacts of various styles were precisely the weapons of several divine lord powerhouses. Although the monarchs were dead and their corpses were corroded into ashes by the strong poison, their divine artifacts were of a higher grade. However, their weapons were of a higher grade, so they weren't affected much. Ji Tianxing did not care about these divine artifacts, nor did he have any use for them. However, these monarch-grade middle-grade divine artifacts were worth at least a few million divine stones each. They also contained vigorous divine power and were reinforced with precepts and restriction spells. Even if Ji Tianxing devoured them, he would still benefit greatly. Soon, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianxing cleaned up the battlefield and killed all the elite experts who were not completely dead before he disappeared into the night. He went around Tianfeng City and continued to fly south. About 30 minutes later, only 3 groups of divine beings appeared in the quiet and silent wilderness. They were all divine realm experts. They wore black clothes and masks, and their movements were swift and stealthy. These were the scouts and spies of the princess residence. They investigated the situation in the wilderness and saw pits and ravines everywhere. There were white bones and skeletons everywhere. They were dumbfounded. When they came to their senses and recognized the skeletons, their expressions changed drastically and they were scared out of their wits. After calming down, these scouts and spies rushed back to Tianfeng County City as fast as they could to report the news to their superiors. At dawn, Tianfeng City was still in a deep sleep and it was as peaceful as ever. However, a shocking piece of bad news spread among the princess residents and the 5 aristocratic families. About an hour ago, the princess and the monarchs of the 5 aristocratic families had ambushed Tianxing in the wilderness outside the city. Their mission was a complete failure. Not only were the princess and Huanyu killed, but the middle-level monarchs sent by the 5 aristocratic families also died without a complete corpse. More than 660 divine realm experts sent by the 5 aristocratic families and the princess residents were also killed. There were only 30 or so experts left and they fled back to the city. These experts were scared out of their wits and they looked extremely terrified. The family heads of the aristocratic families found these experts and asked them about the situation in person, but they did not get any information. They only knew that a mysterious black figure had rushed out of the array and released a deadly poison that filled the sky. More than 200 elite experts were quickly killed after being enveloped by the deadly poison. Other than that, they did not know anything else. Who was that black figure? What did he look like? How long had the princess and the monarchs been fighting with that black figure? What was the black figure's cultivation level? What were his characteristics? The surviving experts could not answer these questions at all. For a moment, the entire Tianfeng city was shrouded in a haze. The princess residence and the 5 aristocratic families were on tenterhooks. They were filled with fear and worry. They were worried that the mysterious expert would sneak into the city and start a massacre to take revenge. However, it turned out that their worries were unfounded. End of chapter. Chapter 29:18. For an entire day and night, Tianfeng City was shrouded in a haze. The people in the city were anxious and the 6 forces were on high alert. The atmosphere was heavy and depressing. Even though the ordinary people did not know what had happened. But there were rumors in the princess's mansion and the 5 families. It was said that the princess and the Sir God experts of the 5 families were killed outside the city last night. This news was like a bolt from the blue to the ordinary people. The princess was killed. At this moment, the sky of Tianfeng City had fallen. Which divine emperor was so daring as to assassinate a county lord? Wasn't this going against the bloody Flame Kingdom? They had to report this to the king and ask him to punish the murderer. The first thought that came to the people's minds was shock and indignation. But then, they felt that something was amiss. If the princess was killed in the princess's mansion, it could be said that it was a premeditated assassination. But why did the princess die in the wilderness outside the city? Also, why did the 5 great aristocratic families also send out divine lord powerhouses, each leading 100 masters? Why were the 6 forces working together? There must be something fishy going on. It was not as simple as it seemed. Therefore, many of the common people developed their imaginations to make wild guesses and analyze the reasons. In a short period of time, all kinds of strange reasons were spread among the people. There were also some people who were trying to please the crowd. Not only did they come up with absurd reasons, they also described the process vividly, as if they had experienced it themselves. Just like that, one wonderful story after another began to spread in Tianfeng province. The commandery princess's residence and the 5 aristocratic families were also shrouded in darkness. The people's shock and indignation towards the death of the princess gradually turned into curiosity and onlookers. Everyone thought that the king would be furious after such a big thing had happened in Tianfeng city. Just wait and see, the show is about to start. But the reaction of the princess's mansion and the 5 families was different from the people. The 6 forces closed their doors and kept quiet. No one came out to explain, and no one showed up. They were all hiding in their own mansions. While they were on guard, they were secretly packing up their belongings and preparing to leave the city and escape. The people did not know the inside story, but they knew very well. The commandery princess and the 5 aristocratic families had teamed up to ambush the Qi family's minister Tianxing and kill him in the wilderness. Unexpectedly, their plan failed. Not only did he fail to kill Tianxing, but he was also beaten to a pulp. The 7 Sir God experts, including the princess, had all lost their lives in the wilderness. Not even a complete corpse was left. This was simply too terrifying. The people from the 6 great powers couldn't help but wonder how powerful Tianxing was. He was most likely one of the best among the high divine lords, right? An expert at this level was enough to run amok in the blood-flame divine kingdom. The most frightening thing was, 7 Sir Gods and more than 600 experts had been killed, but they hadn't seen Tianxing's true face until their deaths. No one was sure whether Tianxing had reached the wilderness or not. Was he the one who killed the 7 monarchs of gods and the many experts? These were all mysteries. The princess, 6 divine monarchs, and more than 600 experts had all died without knowing why. Thinking of this, the people from the 6 major forces became even more terrified. They all knew that once Tianxing started his revenge and sneaked into Tianfeng city, no one would be able to stop him. He could track them down and kill them all. Therefore, everyone was on tenterhooks and their hearts were filled with despair and sadness. Fortunately, the gloomy and torturous day had finally passed. Until the next morning, when the sun rose. The 2 city gates of Tianfeng city still showed no signs of being invaded. The people from the 6 major forces didn't decrease and no one was attacked. At this moment, everyone was slightly relieved. It seems that Tianxing doesn't want to take revenge on us. It's been 1 day and 2 nights and Tianxing hasn't appeared. He should have left Tianfeng city. That's right. He killed so many people in one breath. This news must have shocked the entire divine kingdom. If he doesn't escape quickly, he will be caught soon. Although Tianxing killed the princess and so many experts, there is a limit to his strength. I guess he is seriously injured and doesn't dare to take revenge. He must have hidden away to heal himself. The experts of the 6 major forces had all sorts of thoughts, and they were all secretly guessing. Late in the morning, the 6 major forces sent a large number of guards to the wilderness to clean up the battlefield and collect the corpses and belongings of the experts. That night, the 5 major families held a simple memorial ceremony. There was a mourning hall set up in the main hall to pay respects to the princess, Earl Chishan. At the same time, the princess's residence issued an obituary and submitted a document to the king to punish Tianxing severely. For the next 3 days, the princess's residence was filled with incense and cries. Countless people, squires, and celebrities came to pay respects to the princess. Everyone looked sad and indignant, hoping that the king would catch the murderer soon and give the princess an explanation. Even the heads of the 5 major families came to pay their respects. Even though many people knew that the princess would die in vain, they knew that the princess would die in vain. The princess's residents claimed that the murderer was Tianxing, but they couldn't produce any evidence. Even if the king wanted to protect the reputation of the divine kingdom and give the princess an explanation, he couldn't arrest people for no reason. However, the princess was an earl of the divine kingdom and a high official in charge of a region. After she was killed, a memorial ceremony would be held and a dignified explanation would be given. If the princess's residents kept silent and acted as if nothing had happened, that would be the biggest joke. Although the 5 major families each lost a senior god and hundreds of experts. However, this loss was still within an acceptable range. Even if they knew that the murderer was Tianxing, they could only suffer in silence and give up. They couldn't continue to chase after Tianxing, right? What if they angered him and he slaughtered their entire family? Wouldn't that be an even more unjust death? The heads of the 5 major families were all thinking about the aftermath. They were all ambitious and had their eyes on the princess's position. Earl Chishan was already dead. The princess's position couldn't be empty, right? The king liked to act according to the situation and would most likely choose a princess to take charge of the affairs of the Tianfeng county. In this way, the 5 major families all had a chance. Didn't the king do this when the Qingshan city lord was killed? So, after the 5 major families paid their respects to the princess, they all started to take action. They gathered the power of their families in the Tianfeng county and secretly started to compete. The small ones included a few shops, a few workshops, and a few courtyards. The big ones included a few hundred slaves and guards, a street, a valley, a mine. These were all things that the 5 major families fought over. When Earl Chishan was still alive, these things belonged to the common people, other small forces, or the princess's residents. But now, the 5 major families didn't care about their relatives and were unscrupulous. Everyone wanted to seize more resources and grasp more authority. Soon, they would have a greater chance of winning the princess's position. Just like this, the internal strife in the Tianfeng county began. End of chapter. Chapter 29:19. The plundering of the 5 aristocratic families became more and more intense. Not only were the properties of the commoners and small factions stolen, but even the assets of the princess's residents were stolen. It was already 3 days later. At this time, the princess's residents woke up from their grief. They were shocked by the audacity of the 5 aristocratic families and angry at their despicable and sinister ways. 4 days ago, they were still working together, but in the blink of an eye, they besieged the princess's residence. All of them turned into jackals and wolves, wanting to tear off a big piece of meat from the princess's residence. It was truly a case of cooking the hounds after they had outlived their usefulness. Therefore, the people of the princess's residence suppressed their grief and started to defend and counterattack. The 6 aristocratic families displayed their abilities and fought in the dark, causing the Tianfeng county city to become even more chaotic. At the same time, Ji Tianxing rode the Black Dragon and was already far away from the Tianfeng county city. The Black Dragon crossed 2 cities and was about to enter the Tianxue county. After crossing 2 more cities and flying for 4 days, he would arrive at the Tianxue county city. During the journey, Ji Tianxing was meditating and cultivating. He had gained a lot from the battle in the wasteland. Not to mention the godhead fragments of the 600 experts, just the godheads of the 7 mid-level godlords were enough for him to cultivate for a long time. In addition, he had also plundered hundreds of interspatial rings from the battlefield. He categorized all the cultivation resources and put them into his own ring. A rough estimate put the value of the ring at around 20 billion. There were tens of billions of god stones, mountains of divine elixirs and talisman materials, and countless divine weapons and equipment. Ji Tianxing kept this huge fortune for now. When he needed it in the future, he would find a way to exchange it for what he needed. After 4 days of cultivation, his strength had improved again. Not only had his divine power doubled, but he had also obtained many nomological laws from the godhead fragments. Now, The number of nomological laws he had mastered had reached 120. This number was already very terrifying. In the entire Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, only a few high-level godlords could condense so many nomological laws. Moreover, Ji Tianxing had not finished refining the Godhead fragments in his hands. He estimated that he would be able to refine all of them by the time he arrived at the Qianxue County City. At that time, he would have around 130 nomological laws. That evening, the sun was setting. A dot of light flew down from the sky and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. He quickly ended his cultivation and reached out to grab the jade slip in the spiritual light, using his divine sense to read the information within. The message in the jade slip was very brief. Tianfeng City is already in chaos. The 5 aristocratic families are taking advantage of the situation to amass wealth and wantonly seize resources and properties. In order to protect themselves, the commandery princess could only retaliate with all their might. The 6 major forces were secretly fighting each other, causing chaos in the city and a large number of civilians to suffer. Obviously, this communication jade slip was reporting the latest news of Tianfeng province to him. Ji Tianxing had always been a lone wolf and had yet to establish a force or build an intelligence network. However, the Qi family trusted him very much, and their relationship with him was also very deep. Even if the two sides had broken off their relationship on the surface, they had never stopped contacting each other in secret. Qi Tianlong and his son were still worried about Ji Tianxing's safety. They used the informants of the Qi family to inquire about the news and report it to Ji Tianxing at any time. Ji Tianxing put away the communication jade slip, and the corners of his mouth curled into a playful smile. It's just as I expected. There was no friendship between the 5 aristocratic families and the commandery princess. There was only a collusion of interests between them. Once the commandery princess was killed, the 5 aristocratic families would turn into jackals and wolves and tear the commandery princess into pieces. The throne of a commandery princess is very tempting. Bai Long, who was standing at the side, heard his words and asked subconsciously, "Master, the 5 aristocratic families and the commandery princess becoming enemies was also within your expectations?" Ji Tianxing nodded slightly. Bai Long revealed a look of worry and asked, "The fight between the 5 aristocratic families and the commandery princess has caused chaos in Tianfeng province. Won't it make things worse? The ruler of Bloodflame country will definitely know about this and send people to investigate. He will definitely know that you are the murderer. We also don't know what kind of character the ruler is. What if the ruler is enraged and sends a large number of experts to besiege you? Won't we be in danger?" Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said calmly, "What you said is the worst-case scenario. If the ruler is really so crude, then we will just leave the Bloodflame country. However, I believe that the ruler won't be so muddle-headed. The more the 5 aristocratic families and the commandery princess are in trouble, the safer it will be for us. The ruler will definitely not sit by and watch the Tianfeng province fall into chaos. He will definitely calm the Tianfeng province down in the shortest time possible. He will also quickly decide on a new commandery princess. The 5 aristocratic families' plan is destined to fail. When the new commandery princess is appointed, the 5 aristocratic families will have to cut off their flesh and blood." Bai Long nodded repeatedly to express his agreement. That's right. From the incident in Qingshan City, the ruler is someone who cares about the big picture and doesn't care about the small details. However, I am worried that after the Tianfeng province is settled, the prince behind the Bloodsword sect will fan the flames and slander the ruler. At that time, the ruler will be free to deal with you and we will become enemies with the Bloodflame country. With Master around, I am naturally not afraid of a divine kingdom. Even if I become enemies with the entire Great Yang Empire, it won't be a big deal. I am only worried that your plan will be disrupted." Ji Tianxing shook his head and smiled. "Don't worry, the ruler isn't that muddle-headed. The Bloodsword sect and the prince want to get rid of me, so how can the ruler be used as a tool? Moreover, it doesn't matter even if things reach that stage. After I deal with commandery Princess Tianfeng, my next target will be the Bloodsword sect." Seeing how confident Zhong Xian was, the White Dragon's confidence was boosted. No wonder so many experts who are good at concealment and tracking have been following us for the past 3 days. If I'm not wrong, those spies should be from the Bloodsword sect. Even though Commandery Princess Tianfeng is dead, the Bloodsword sect still hasn't given up. Bai Long reported the situation over the past 3 days with a mocking smile on his face. In his opinion, with his master's current strength and methods, he could definitely deal with the Bloodsword sect. Ji Tianxing nodded to express his understanding. After a moment of silence, he added, "Those spies are mostly from the Bloodsword sect, but not all of them. The matter of Azure Mountain City and Tianfeng City must have been known by many factions. Therefore, those factions will also pay attention to us and send people to secretly follow us." Bai Long was enlightened by Zuan's reminder. That's right. The Bloodsword sect is one of the 6 great sects, but it isn't the strongest. The Bloodsword sect has allies, but they also have powerful enemies. Since the Bloodsword sect is fighting us to the death and has suffered heavy losses, their enemies will be the ones to fight us to the death. Therefore, the Bloodsword sect's allies and enemies will also pay attention to us. You're worth teaching. Ji Tianxing nodded with satisfaction and smiled. Therefore, they have been waiting for us on that mountain for a long time. With that, he stood up and looked at the mountain 1,000 miles away with a playful gaze. End of chapter. Chapter 29-20. Logically speaking, with White Dragon's strength, his divine sense was sufficient to cover a radius of 20,000 miles. He was responsible for guarding Ji Tianxing and guarding the surrounding situation. That tall mountain 1,000 miles ahead, he had long used divine sense to explore it. On the majestic mountain peak, it was covered with towering trees and dense forests. Apart from that, there was not a single living thing. Forget about any deity realm powerhouse, even a demonic beast and flying bird could not be found. But Ji Tianxing said that there was someone waiting for them on that tall mountain. White Dragon naturally did not doubt Master's words. He immediately realized that the person lurking on that tall mountain, his strength must have reached the Divine Lord realm. At the same time, he also raised his vigilance. Swoosh! Before long, Black Dragon flew across the 1,000 miles of sky and arrived at that 10,000 feet tall mountain. Black Dragon hovered above the mountain peak, looking down at the mountain peak with a sharp gaze. White Dragon also observed for a moment but did not discover any abnormalities. He could not see where the person was at all. At this time, Ji Tianxing stepped across the sky and flew toward the mountain peak. "You guys wait here." Hearing his instructions, Black Dragon and White Dragon stayed in the sky and did not follow. Ji Tianxing landed on the mountain peak alone, standing on a towering ancient tree 1,000 feet tall. He stared at the forest on the side of the cliff and said in a calm tone, "You guys have been waiting here for a long time. This lord is already here, still not showing yourself?" A calm and indifferent voice sounded on the mountain peak. However, the forest near the cliff was still calm. No one appeared. When White Dragon and Black Dragon saw this scene, they also felt that it was somewhat strange. The same thought could not help emerging in their minds. Where is there someone here? Master wouldn't have made a mistake, right? If there's really someone, shouldn't he have come out by now? Just as White Dragon and Black Dragon were puzzled, Ji Tianxing said with a cold smile, "This lord already gave you guys a chance. Since you guys aren't willing to cherish it, then forget it." Finished talking, he turned around and was about to fly away. Until then, in the seemingly calm forest, a middle-aged man's voice came. "Young Master Tianxing, please wait." Following the voice, a middle-aged man wearing a golden robe and a jade crown flew out of the forest. This man was more than 10 feet tall, with broad shoulders and long arms, and a mighty and majestic body. His face was resolute, and his hair was white. His eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life, and also revealed a dark red color. Without a doubt, this was a divine lord powerhouse. Furthermore, his strength was even stronger than that of a middle divine lord, and his aura was unfathomable. Behind the golden-robed Sir God, there were 4 black-robed elite experts. Everyone's neckline was embroidered with the symbol of a dark red saber. Seeing these 5 people appear, the White Dragon and the Black Dragon were stunned, somewhat in disbelief. Ji Tianxing stopped and turned to look at the middle-aged man with a playful smile on his face. "He's actually a high divine lord." "That's right. It seems that you are quite sincere." Hearing these two sentences, White Dragon and Black Dragon were even more shocked. That dignified golden-robed man was actually a high divine lord. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Ever since everyone entered the divine realm, this was the first time they saw a high divine lord. The golden-robed man flew to the sky above the forest, maintaining a distance of 300 feet from Ji Tianxing. After standing still, he cupped his hands and bowed, saying, "Young Master Tianxing is indeed a dragon among men, the most outstanding young expert. I used the Qi concealment art with all my strength, but I still couldn't escape young Master Tianxing's eyes. Such strength and methods make me deeply impressed and gratified." Ji Tianxing waved his hand and said indifferently, "All right, let's skip the pleasantries and get straight to the point. Which force are you from? Why are you waiting for me here? And who are you?" The golden-robed man didn't seem to expect Ji Tianxing to be so confident. Moreover, he wasn't surprised by his arrival, as if he could predict the future. After pondering for a while, the golden-robed man said solemnly, "Let me introduce myself. I'm Jin Wu, the left emissary of the Bloodblade sect. This time, I've come to the Sky Snow region and waited for young master on this nameless mountain to invite young master Tianxing to discuss a big matter." "Bloodblade sect? Left emissary Jin?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows, a faint smile hanging on his lips. The matter in Azure Mountain City and the Skywind region can't be considered small, but it can't be considered big either. At least 3 or 4 of the 6 great sects will pay attention to me. However, the other sects didn't show up, only left emissary Jin representing the Bloodblade sect. If I'm not wrong, the Bloodblade sect and the Bloodsword sect should have the deepest enmity and are like fire and water. As for your so-called big matter, it should have something to do with the Bloodsword sect. Left emissary Jin couldn't help but frown at these words, muttering inwardly, "This brat can analyze all these twists and turns with just a few words from me. Is he clever and meticulous, or did he inquire about this beforehand?" Left emissary Jin wasn't too sure. After all, many experts and great powers knew about the long-standing enmity between the Bloodblade sect and the Bloodsword sect. If Ji Tianxing had inquired about it beforehand, it wouldn't be strange for him to say it now. But in any case, left emissary Jin could see that this young man wasn't easy to deal with. "Ha ha ha. Young Master Tianxing is truly a young talent. Your words alone have made me look at you in a new light. Since we're all smart people, I won't beat around the bush. Young Master's guess is correct. The big matter I mentioned is indeed related to the Bloodsword sect. I want to obtain young Master's help to exterminate the Bloodsword sect," left emissary Jin said with a solemn expression. Ji Tianxing wasn't surprised at all. He was already mentally prepared and said with a playful smile, "The 6 great sects have existed for a long time. For nearly 10,000 years, they've existed side by side, and no one has been able to topple the other. It's good that left emissary Jin has such lofty aspirations, but I wonder if the Bloodblade sect has the strength to do so?" Seeing that he had no intention of refusing, left emissary Jin smiled and said confidently, "Young Master Tianxing, rest assured. Our sect and the Bloodsword sect have fought for several thousand years, and we've always been evenly matched. From this, it can be seen that our sect and the Bloodsword sect's forces are almost equal. If we can obtain young Master Tianxing's help, we'll have a 90% chance of success." Ji Tianxing only listened and didn't express any opinion. He seemed to be considering it. Left emissary Jin struck while the iron was hot and threw out his conditions. For 300 years, the right emissary position has been empty, waiting for a true expert. As long as young Master Tianxing nods, our sect will immediately bestow you the position of right emissary. From then on, you'll be the Bloodblade sect's right emissary. In the entire Bloodflame Divine Kingdom, no one will dare to look down on you or provoke you. Furthermore, our sect will provide the most generous conditions and the most abundant resources. Left emissary Jin was very sincere. However, before he could finish his sentence, Ji Tianxing rejected him. "This lord appreciates your sect's good intentions. Unfortunately, This lord doesn't like to submit to others and has no intention of joining any faction for the time being. End of chapter. Chapter 29-21. In the beginning, the discussion went well and seemed to go smoothly. But at the critical moment, Ji Tianxing firmly refused. Left emissary Jin was stunned for a moment, and a trace of astonishment flashed in his eyes. He secretly cursed in his heart, "Don't like to be under others? Don't want to join a force? Then when you were in Qingshan City, you were still a consecrator of the Qi family?" Of course, these thoughts could only be thought in his heart and could not be spoken out. And this time he came to recruit Ji Tianxing, he had made sufficient preparations. Since the first plan did not work, he immediately changed to the second plan. It turns out that young Master Tianxing is naturally free and likes to be unrestrained. Then it's even easier. You can still be the right emissary of our sect, but only in name. You don't have to report to the sect, and you don't have to stay in the sect. All your actions and freedom will not be interfered with by the sect. But the treatment you will enjoy will not change. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Well, this condition sounds quite tempting. I am willing to believe that your sect has indeed come with sincerity." Hearing him say so, left emissary Jin showed a spring breeze smile. "So, young Master Tianxing agrees? Then let's not delay any longer, you will come back to the sect with me now. Taking over the position of right emissary requires a ceremony and process." However, Ji Tianxing waved his hand again. "Left emissary Jin misunderstands. I still don't want to join the Bloodblade sect, and I don't want to be the right emissary. After all, the title of right emissary of the Bloodblade sect sounds like an evil villain, and it does not suit my temperament and position." Ah! The smile on left emissary Jin's face suddenly froze. At this moment, he could not help but roar in his heart, and wanted to curse. Just because the name of our sect is unpleasant to hear. What kind of bullshit reason is this? What kind of villain is this? Does not suit your temperament and position? You killed so many people before, and your methods were ruthless. What's the difference between you and a villain? After a while, left emissary Jin suppressed the anger in his heart. With a solemn expression, he looked at Ji Tianxing and asked in a deep voice, "If that's the case, I would like to know what young Master Tianxing has in mind. You should know your current situation better than I do. The Lord of Qingshan City was only a minor character. The king had no reason to punish a newly conferred viscount for such a minor character. That would be slapping his own face. However, Princess Tianfeng was different. She was the Earl of the Divine Nation, one of the 36 feudal officials. It won't be long before the monarch's decree arrives, and it will be very difficult for you to survive in the Bloodflame Divine Kingdom. Not to mention, the Bloodsword sect had publicly declared that they would not rest until one of them was dead. No matter how strong you are, how can you contend against the ancient Bloodsword sect? Only by joining our sect and becoming our right emissary can we ensure your safety. Due to certain reasons, the monarch may suppress this matter and let you off. As for the Bloodsword sect, we'll join hands and eliminate them." Left emissary Jin stared at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said in a certain tone, "No matter how you look at it, this is the best choice for you." Ji Tianxing said with a spurious smile, "That's just your wishful thinking. How much do you know about me? As for the monarch issuing a decree to arrest me, that's even more nonsense. There isn't even any evidence and it's just a groundless accusation. What right do you have to arrest me?" Left emissary Jin frowned and stared at Ji Tianxing. He asked in a deep voice, "Then what does young Master Tianxing mean?" He had come to recruit Ji Tianxing because of the Bloodblade sect's master's instructions. Even if he couldn't recruit him, he had to ascertain Ji Tianxing's attitude. At the very least, this person couldn't become enemies with the Bloodblade sect. He had to fight the Bloodsword sect to the end. Only then would the Bloodblade sect benefit the most. Ji Tianxing said with an indifferent expression, "I won't join the Bloodblade sect. Tell your master to give up. However, if the Bloodblade sect is sincere, we can cooperate as equals. We can join hands and destroy the Bloodsword sect as quickly as possible." At this point, he waved his hand at left emissary Jin. "I'm afraid you can't make the decision on this matter. Pass on my words to the Bloodblade sect's master. Whether or not the Bloodblade sect takes action, I will destroy the Bloodsword sect. You can do as you see fit. With that, Ji Tianxing turned to leave. Left emissary Jin frowned and coldly shouted, "Wait." Ji Tianxing raised his brows. "What? Can you make the decision on behalf of the master?" Left emissary Jin avoided the question and said with a solemn tone, "You're young and promising, but you're too frivolous. You're alone. Even if you have some strength, you can't compare to our sect. What qualifications do you have to cooperate as equals?" Equal cooperation meant that both sides had to contribute the same amount of strength. After destroying the Bloodsword sect, the benefits had to be divided equally. The Bloodblade sect was one of the 6 great sects. How could they agree? Qualifications? Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a meaningful smile. "May I ask what rank Left Emissary Jin's strength is in your sect?" Left Emissary Jin was stunned for a moment, not quite understanding his intentions. He subconsciously replied, "Third." Ji Tianxing nodded. "Very good. Then you'll know immediately whether or not I have the qualifications to cooperate as equals with the Bloodblade sect." As soon as he finished speaking, he slowly raised his palms and activated his surging divine power. He used his ultimate technique. "Take this. Dracophant Divine Fist." Ji Tianxing roared as his fists burst out with a rainbow-colored divine light. 2 mountain-sized dracophants carrying the divine might of 50 laws descended from the sky toward Left Emissary Jin. The moment he attacked, Left Emissary Jin understood his intentions. Without any hesitation, he erupted with his full strength and raised his palms to meet the attack. Ancient Divine Bloodblade Slash. The strength of a 7th-level Divine Lord erupted without reservation. An earth-shattering divine might enveloped a radius of a few thousand miles, causing the space to freeze. 2 giant blood-red blades that were thousands of feet long slashed toward the dracophants with a divine might that could destroy everything. Both of them erupted with their full strength and used their most powerful ultimate skills. At this moment, the surrounding thousands of miles were illuminated by divine light. It was extremely dazzling. Kaboom! The dracophants and the 2 bloody blades collided fiercely in the sky, creating a deafening explosion that shook the clouds. The next moment, the dracophants and the bloody blades collapsed at the same time, bursting into shards that blotted out the sky. Violent shockwaves, along with billions of fragments of divine light, spread out in all directions, creating world-destroying hurricanes. The 1,000-foot mountain under everyone's feet was instantly razed to the ground. The surrounding thousands of miles of mountain range was also completely flattened, turning into a desolate ruin. In the shocking storm, Ji Tianxing stood motionless in the sky with a calm expression. However, Left Emissary Jin was forced back hundreds of feet. He let out a muffled groan and his face turned pale. Without a doubt, he had already been injured by the collision just now. Although it was only a minor injury, he had already lost. P.S. Readers, I am He Wuhan. I recommend a free app that supports downloading, listening to books, 0 ads, and multiple reading modes. Please follow, book friends, quickly follow. Chapter 29-22. The divine light in the sky dissipated. The loud noise that reverberated in the sky also gradually disappeared. Above the ruins, peace was restored. The black dragon and the white dragon stopped 200 miles away and were not hurt. The 4 black-robed experts that Left Emissary Jin had brought were dispirited and their breaths were disordered. Apparently, they were too close and were injured by the shockwave. However, the 4 of them couldn't be bothered to heal their injuries. They stared at Ji Tianxing with their mouths agape, their hearts filled with shock. Until now, they still could not believe that Left Emissary Jin had been defeated. He was the Left Emissary of the Bloodblade sect, a 7th-degree upper divine lord. Who in the Bloody Flame Divine Kingdom did not know Left Emissary Jin's name? He was definitely one of the top experts in the Divine Kingdom. But he had been defeated by an unknown young man. This was simply unbelievable. Ji Tianxing and Left Emissary Jin were standing in the sky and looking at each other from 10 miles away. Ji Tianxing looked indifferent and there was a smile on his face. Left Emissary Jin's face was ugly and his eyes were solemn. What kind of monster is this guy? Didn't he represent the Qi family in the martial arts competition more than a month ago? At that time, he had not reached the Divine Lord realm. Now he has the strength of a upper Divine Lord. This is impossible. How can there be such an abnormal genius in the world? Left emissary Jin was silent, but his heart was in turmoil and he could not calm down. Before he met Ji Tianxing, he had investigated Ji Tianxing's information. In the Tianfeng County city, the Tianfeng County princess had gathered 7 mid-level godlords and 700 heavenly god experts to set up a grand formation to ambush Ji Tianxing. In the end, the 7 middle divine lords and many experts were almost annihilated. Princess Tianfeng had sacrificed her own life for this. The most terrifying thing was that Ji Tianxing did not show his face and did not leave any traces. Everyone knew that he was the one who did it, but no one could prove it. Because of this, the Bloodblade sect was determined to recruit him. However, left emissary Jin thought to himself that Ji Tianxing must have used some kind of method to sneak attack him. This did not mean that Ji Tianxing had the strength of a upper divine lord. But now, he had personally exchanged a blow with Ji Tianxing and had even suffered a loss. With the ironclad facts in front of him, he had to admit that Ji Tianxing was indeed very strong. He had the strength of a high divine lord and was qualified to discuss cooperation with the Bloodblade sect. After a long silence, left emissary Jin finally calmed down. He cupped his hands towards Ji Tianxing and said, "Young Master Tianxing, this seat admires you. I will definitely pass on what you just said to the sect master." This time, left emissary Jin's tone and expression carried a hint of respect. His pride as the left emissary of the Bloodblade sect had been completely erased. Ji Tianxing nodded his head slightly and said in an indifferent tone, "I will wait for your news in Tianxue County within half a month. I will not wait for any later." With that, he turned and flew towards the black dragon in the distance. Looking at his back, Envoy Jin solemnly said, "Young Master Tianxing, don't worry. It won't take as long as half a month." Ji Tianxing did not answer him. Without looking back, he boarded the black dragon and flew towards the south. Left emissary Jin watched the black dragon disappear into the horizon before leaving with the 4 experts. On the black dragon's back, Bai Long looked at Ji Tianxing with scorching eyes and praised, "Master is too domineering. That guy was just cocky and in the blink of an eye, he was slapped in the face by you." TSK, left emissary of the Bloodblade sect, a high divine lord, there's nothing great about him. He was still injured by Master in one move and admitted defeat willingly. In Bai Long's heart, Master was always the strongest. When he left Qingshan City, he knew that Master was qualified to do whatever he wanted in the Bloodflame Divine Kingdom. But this was a general concept. He wasn't too sure how strong his master was. Now he knew. Master was stronger than a 7th Heaven Divine Lord and comparable to an 8th Heaven Divine Lord. In the entire Bloodflame Divine Kingdom, there should only be a single-digit number of 8th Heaven Divine Lord experts. Bai Long thought in his heart and looked forward to the next plan more and more. Ji Tianxing did not say anything, nor was he complacent. It was as if to him, defeating Envoy Jin in one move was as simple as eating and drinking, no big deal. He sat cross-legged on the black dragon's back and continued to refine the divine spark fragments to improve his strength. Bai Long stood by the side to protect him, but many thoughts appeared in his mind. There are spies and informants following us all the way. The news of the battle between Master and Envoy Jin just now will soon spread. Not long after, all the major forces and sects will know that Bloodblade sect tried to recruit Master but was rejected by him. The Bloodblade sect's left emissary was not convinced. After exchanging a few moves with his master, he was injured. In this way, all the major forces will be inexplicably shocked and fear Master even more. Even Bloodsword sect will tremble a few times. However, Master's fame is currently limited to a few counties in the north and those few sects. When Master defeated all the major forces along the way, the royal family of Bloodflame Divine Kingdom will also notice him. At that time, will the monarch try to recruit Master and make him the emperor's son-in-law or a grand marshal? If Master doesn't want to marry the princess, can I, as his disciple, do it for him? Bai Long was lost in his reverie. His handsome face could not help but reveal a trace of a smile. It was a little cheap. For the next few days, The journey was safe and sound. Although there were still a dozen spies following Ji Tianxing, they all kept their distance. However, those spies all kept a distance. They were very secretive and cautious. They didn't dare to reveal any flaws or attack. Even Bloodsword sect temporarily gave up and didn't have any intention of intercepting them. It seemed that the battle between Ji Tianxing and Envoy Jin had indeed intimidated many factions. On the fourth evening, the setting sun was like blood and the cold wind blew. Black Dragon carried Ji Tianxing and smoothly arrived at the heavenly snow county. Before entering the city, Black Dragon and White Dragon returned to the Divine Tower to rest. Ji Tianxing flew through the sky and arrived at the northern gate of the heavenly snow county. Bathing in the setting sun, he quietly sized up the majestic city in front of him. Although this county was the same as the heavenly wind county, it was located at the northernmost tip of the boundless heaven continent. However, the heavenly snow county was surrounded by majestic mountains and valleys. Unlike the desolation of the heavenly wind county, this county was filled with a graceful and luxurious aura. Although they were both ancient cities, the heavenly snow county's city walls and gates were built more exquisitely. The commoners and gods that entered and exited the city were also dressed in gorgeous and exquisite clothing. Their movements were more elegant. Unlike the people of the heavenly wind county, they were more valiant and boorish. Ji Tianxing walked along the bluestone paved road toward the 300-meter tall city gates. Along the way, he thought to himself, the Ning family should have received the news that I caused such a huge commotion in the heavenly wind county. I wonder if the Ning family still has the guts and courage to accept me as a guest. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he saw a golden carriage under the city gates pulled by two white-winged pagazi. Chapter 29-23. There were many commoners passing by the city gates. However, no one dared to approach the golden carriage. Their expressions were filled with awe. Even the dozens of city guards turned a blind eye to the carriage. They completely ignored the fact that the carriage was blocking the road and was affecting the commoners' normal movement. It was obvious that the golden carriage represented the nobility, the kind that ordinary people could not afford to offend. Ji Tianxing stared at the carriage and noticed that there was a family emblem engraved on the carriage. If I remember correctly, that should be the Ning family emblem. When he was in Qingshan City, he saw the Ning family's caravan and Ning Xiyuan's sword. It was exactly that emblem. It seems that the Ning family has some courage. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows. His lips curled into a smile as he walked towards the carriage. However, he was stopped when he reached the front of the carriage. Two of the silver-armored guards guarding the two sides of the carriage immediately walked out and stared at him with an unfriendly expression. Please leave. Otherwise, there will be a bloody disaster. Ji Tianxing frowned. He looked at the young guard with a faint smile and said, Are you a guard of the Ning family? Why are you so arrogant? The young guard's face was still cold. He said arrogantly, Since you know that this is the Ning family's carriage, you should know the consequences of provoking the Ning family. Ji Tianxing was too lazy to talk to him. He asked directly, You stopped here because you were ordered to pick up someone, right? The young guard glanced at him and said in a low voice, So what? What does it have to do with you? Ji Tianxing was not angry. He continued to ask, The person you want to pick up is young Master Tianxing from Qingshan City, right? The young guard was stunned. He frowned and said, So what? Ji Tianxing was both angry and amused. I've already said it so clearly. Can you use your brain? The young guard was stunned again. He still did not understand. The middle-aged guard beside him hurriedly pulled him and whispered, Don't be rash. Look at the portrait given by the young lady first. The young guard quickly took out a scroll and unfolded a portrait. He compared it with Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing glanced at the scroll. It was indeed him. Of course, it was his image when he was in Qingshan City. The painting was vivid and lifelike. The brushwork was delicate and gentle. It was full of spirit. Ji Tianxing could see that it was the work of a certain woman. The young guard put away the scroll and said with a dark face, Your Excellency is not the person we are waiting for. Please leave. The middle-aged guard also had his hand on the hilt of his saber as he stared at Ji Tianxing vigilantly. To that. How could he reason with this kind of thing? He couldn't possibly explain to the two guards that he had disguised himself in Qingshan City in order to hide his identity from the public. Now that he had left Qingshan City, he wanted to return to his original appearance. Wouldn't he be treated as an idiot? Sigh. Forget it. Ji Tianxing sighed helplessly and turned to leave. He decided not to take the golden carriage. He would walk into the city and then go to the Ning family. This was more low-key. Yes, this excuse was very suitable. However, just as he turned around, the young guard rushed forward and blocked his path again. Kid, you fooled us and you still want to leave? Ji Tianxing resisted the urge to roll his eyes and smiled. Young man, you should feel lucky. I am really the person you are waiting for. Otherwise, I would have killed you with one slap. The young guard had a fiery temper. He had a stomach full of anger. Hearing Ji Tianxing's arrogance, his anger was ignited. You daring little bastard. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know the immensity of heaven and earth. As he spoke, the young guard stretched out his left hand and was about to capture Ji Tianxing. His right hand also held a treasured sword and was about to place it on Ji Tianxing's neck. He was very proficient in this set of actions to capture people. It was clean and efficient. However, just as his hand touched Ji Tianxing's sleeve, it was bounced away by an invisible force. Swoosh! He drew an arc in the air and fell directly in front of the carriage, making a muffled plop sound. Many silver-armored guards were alarmed. More than a dozen of them pulled out their swords and were about to surround Ji Tianxing. The people and city guards below the city gate also looked over curiously. At this moment, a clear voice sounded from the golden carriage. Stop! It was the voice of a young woman. Like a silver bell, but very cold and contained a bit of dignity. The many silver-armored guards immediately stopped in their tracks and looked respectfully at the carriage. Then, under everyone's respectful gazes, a slim figure lifted the curtain and walked out of the carriage. It was a young woman from the three-eyed god tribe. She was wearing an exquisite and gorgeous silver armor, which showed off her perfect curves. She didn't wear a helmet, revealing her delicate and beautiful face and a fiery red ponytail. Her clear eyes were icy blue, and the third eye on her forehead was shining like a sapphire. Without a doubt, this woman was the eldest daughter of the Ning family, Ning Xiyuan. When she walked out of the carriage and looked at Ji Tianxing, the guards on both sides bowed. Ji Tianxing looked at her and said with a faint smile, Miss Xiyuan, we meet again. Ning Xiyuan frowned slightly and looked at him for a moment. Then, she raised her eyebrows and asked, You are really young Master Tianxing? Ji Tianxing spread out his hands and said, Of course. Ning Xiyuan hesitated for a moment and asked, This is your true face? Ji Tianxing nodded. Ning Xiyuan's eyebrows relaxed and she thought to herself, No wonder I always felt that his previous face was not perfect enough. His current appearance is more like it. It matches his temperament well. Just as she was thinking, Ji Tianxing said again, Whether you believe it or not, let's get on the carriage first. There are too many people here. It's not good to stay for long. As he spoke, he walked toward the golden carriage. When Ning Xiyuan passed by, he threw her a jade slip and said, This is the secret letter you sent to Qi Tianlong. When he finished speaking, he had already stepped into the carriage. Ning Xiyuan took the jade slip and checked it with her divine sense. As expected. She didn't have any doubts and turned to enter the carriage. The silver-armored guards looked at each other, and a look of realization appeared on their faces. Since the eldest daughter was sure there was no problem, there really was no problem. The captain of the guards ordered in a deep voice, Let's go back to the residence. Many guards escorted the carriage, turned around, passed through the city gate, and drove back to the Ning family. The young guard who stopped Ji Tianxing before looked like he had lost his soul. He was so depressed that he was about to cry. The middle-aged guard next to him smiled bitterly and patted him on the shoulder. He comforted him, after returning to the residence, Go to the torture hall to receive 50 lashes. Maybe you can escape this disaster. The young guard's expression became even more depressed. 50 lashes? Isn't that also a disaster? End of chapter. Chapter 29-24. The small episode that happened outside the city gates ended very quickly. It didn't cause much of a commotion, nor did many people pay attention to it. More than 30 silver-armored guards escorted the golden carriage into the city and drove directly into the Ning residence. In the Tianxue County, the residence with the highest status and power was of course the residence of the princess. But other than that, there were also 4 top-notch aristocratic families. In terms of wealth and background, they might not be inferior to the princess's residence. These 4 aristocratic families had taken root in the Tianxue County for more than 1,000 years and had a complicated network of relationships. Most of the time, the princess's residence had to be courteous to them. Ordinary people didn't dare to rashly provoke these 4 aristocratic families. The Ning family was one of them, and one of the best. The Ning residence was located in the northern part of the city. It was a manor that occupied an area of 10 miles. Not only were there rows upon rows of palaces and houses, there were also pavilions, gardens, and artificial mountains. Even the surroundings of the manor were surrounded by a moat. For thousands of years, the blue water had never stopped flowing. The Ning family was extremely wealthy and powerful. Just the guards and courtyard guards alone numbered more than 1,000. More than 10,000 people lived in the huge manor. Among them, only 1,000 were the direct descendants and collateral descendants of the Ning family. The others were maids, servants, subordinates, and craftsmen of the Ning family. The golden carriage entered the Ning residence, passed through 3 courtyards, a bluestone avenue, a tree-shaded path, and a garden. Finally, it stopped at the 4th courtyard. Ji Tianxing was arranged to stay in the verdant pine courtyard on the east side of the courtyard. This unique and elegant courtyard was specially used to entertain important guests. Not only were there 12 guards, but there were also 4 maids. After Ning Xiyuan arranged everything, he told Ji Tianxing, "Young Master Tianxing, you have come from afar and must be tired from the carriage. Take a bath and rest for a while. After an hour, the banquet will be held in the guest hall next door. At that time, my father will personally accompany you and give you a welcoming dinner." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Okay, then you can go." Ning Xiyuan bowed slightly and left. Ji Tianxing entered the bedroom, and the 4 young maids entered in a line. They were holding towels, herbs, and other things in their hands. They were going to help Ji Tianxing bathe and change his clothes. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing waved his hand and dismissed them. There was no need for a bath. For a divine lord powerhouse like him, his body was condensed from pure divine power without any impurities. Even if he had to run around and fight, he only needed to circulate his energy for a moment and his entire body would be clean. After the maids left, he changed into a set of white robes with silver edges. This set of white robes was exquisite in quality, and the style was exquisite and gorgeous. It was not afraid of being burned by water or fire, and it also had a strong defensive power. Within the white robe, there were 9 types of formations that could keep it warm in winter and cool in summer. This was actually a divine lord-level treasure. When Ji Tianxing put on this white robe, he looked even more dignified and handsome. His whole body exuded a noble and unfathomable aura. I've long heard that the Ning clan is rich, far beyond the Qi clan. He didn't expect the Ning family to be so extravagant. Just give me a change of clothes, and they are all monarch-level divine clothes. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and a trace of a smile flashed across his eyes. But in the blood-flame divine country, money alone is not enough. One must have sufficient strength and means to be able to prosper for a few thousand years. I wonder what level the Ning clan's forces have reached. Before coming to the Tianxue County, Qi Tianlong had warned him. Although the Ning clan was one of the 4 big clans in the Tianxue County. In fact, the other 3 big clans were not qualified to be mentioned in the same breath as the Ning clan. Even the princess's residence had to be courteous to the Ning clan. Even though Qi Tianlong didn't explain the reason. However, Ji Tianxing could also guess that the Ning clan must have an even stronger backer. That backer's status and power were much higher than the princess of the Tianxue County. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Night fell. The 2 guards guarding the door came to the bedroom to report. Reporting to young Master Tianxing, "The time has come. Please go to the guest hall to attend the banquet." Ji Tianxing stood up and walked out of the bedroom. Under the guidance of the two guards, he went to the guest hall. This magnificent guest hall was in the fourth courtyard. Outside the guest hall was a wide plaza. On the left was the verdant pine courtyard, and on the right was the white orchid courtyard. Both courtyards were used to entertain important guests. What surprised Ji Tianxing was that as soon as he walked out of the verdant pine courtyard, he saw a well-dressed young master walking out of the white orchid courtyard. The young master of the great Yang divine race was wearing a brocade robe and a purple cloak. He was thin and tall, and his actions were dignified and elegant. From inside to outside, he emitted a noble aura and a faint arrogance. Under the guidance of the two guards, the well-dressed young master stepped into the guest hall. The guards and maidservants in the guest hall bowed in unison and said respectfully, "Greetings, young Master Duanmu." The well-dressed young master ignored the crowd and walked straight to the center of the guest hall. He naturally sat on the left side of the table. The seat of honor was the main seat, and the two seats next to the main seat were the most distinguished guest seats. However, between the two seats, the left side was the most important. Therefore, when Ji Tianxing stepped into the guest hall, he could only sit on the right side of the table. The two of them sat at a table that was 10 feet apart. They ignored the delicacies on the table and sized each other up indifferently. Young Master Duanmu glanced at Ji Tianxing. He raised an eyebrow and asked, "You have a dignified appearance, an extraordinary appearance, but I don't think you're familiar. Where are you from? Where are you from?" Clearly, young Master Duanmu had seen Ji Tianxing's handsome, heroic, and extraordinary bearing and assumed that he was a noble young master like himself. However, he believed that he knew most of the famous young masters of the aristocratic families in the Bloodflame divine nation. Only Ji Tianxing looked unfamiliar. He was puzzled and could not help but ask. Ji Tianxing raised an eyebrow and said indifferently, "I'm Tianxing from Azure Mountain City." Tianxing. Azure Mountain City? Young Master Duanmu frowned and thought for a while before he had a clue. "I've never heard of your name. As for Azure Mountain City, it seems to be a small, remote city in the north of the divine nation, right next to the Sunset Sea region." Ji Tianxing only nodded slightly and kept silent. The other party's words and actions were not extreme, but his arrogance and disdain were emitted from his bones. He was not interested in chatting with him anymore. Young Master Duanmu did not know that. He thought that Ji Tianxing felt inferior because of his low status, so he smiled and advised, "Young Master Tianxing, don't think too much. As the saying goes, heroes don't ask where they come from. Throughout the past 100,000 years, how many god kings and heroes were born in the wilderness and rose from humble beginnings? A talent like young Master Tianxing may have a bright future." Ji Tianxing was too lazy to care about him and did not respond. Young Master Duanmu sneered inwardly, "Haha. It seems that you remember the saying that the more you speak, the more likely you will make mistakes. You actually ignored me. However, do you think that you can hide your lowly identity and blatant ambition by doing this?" He took out a purple jade folding fan and gently fanned it. He reminded with a smile, "Young Master Tianxing, it's important to know one's own limits. Do not bite off more than you can chew and hope to reach the sky in a single step. There are no shortcuts in this world." Today's 5 chapters, please recommend, monthly, and tips. Thank you. End of chapter. Chapter 29-25. Duanmu Gongzi's words were obviously sarcastic. Ji Tianxing frowned and could no longer remain silent. He stared at the other indifferently and said, "I'm just a guest at the Ning family. You're thinking too much." Duanmu Gongzi waved his fan again, and the smile on his face became even more playful. "Ha ha ha, this Gongzi hasn't said clearly what it is, and you've already denied it. It can be seen that you already have the idea of reaching the heavens in one step. Otherwise, you shouldn't have this reaction, but should be puzzled." No matter how good Ji Tianxing's self-restraint and shrewdness were, he couldn't help but laugh. He said with a playful expression, "This Gongzi has no desires, but you're burning with impatience, jumping up and down. Obviously, you're not confident. No matter what you mean by reaching the heavens in one step. That's all your wishful thinking. This Gongzi disdains to argue with you. In this world, There's no force worthy of this Gongzi currying favor with. These words were very merciless. Duanmu Gongzi's face immediately darkened, and he sneered contemptuously, "Ha ha ha," as expected of a small family from a remote town. "You're so ignorant and frivolous. Since you don't have the idea of climbing up the social ladder, why are you still in the Ning family? Only if you leave the Ning family can you prove that you have no distracting thoughts." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but roll his eyes. Young man, such a clumsy method of provocation really makes one unable to look straight at it. You're so childish and laughable. You're really wasting your good looks. Of course, in this Gongzi's eyes, your looks are just SOSO. You. Duanmu Gongzi was repeatedly provoked, and his anger rose again. He couldn't help but stand up, about to slam the table and fly into a rage. But at this moment, the voices of the guards and maids sounded at the entrance of the hall. "Greetings to the family head. Greetings to the eldest miss." Without a doubt, Ning Qinggang and Ning Xiyuan had come. Duanmu Gongzi hurriedly suppressed his anger and recovered his calm, indifferent, and arrogant attitude. Everyone turned to look at the entrance of the hall. A burly and majestic middle-aged man in a purple robe stepped into the hall. This person was over 3 m tall and robust like an iron tower. His limbs were especially thick and developed, and his entire body emanated a ferocious and valiant aura. He was born with a square forehead and a wide face. Under his thick eyebrows that were like treasured blades, he had a pair of dark blue eyes that were as big as copper bells. He strode into the grand hall, cupped his fist and bowed to Ji Tianxing and young master Duanmu, then said with a loud and clear voice, "I was delayed by something just now. I apologize for making you wait for so long." Obviously, this majestic purple-robed man was the current head of the Ning family, Ning Qinggang. Behind Ning Qinggang was a graceful figure. She was tall and curvy, full of youthful vigor. Tonight, she made an exception and did not wear her silver armor. Instead, she wore an icy blue dress. Her long hair was also tied up in a high bun. Coupled with a gorgeous and exquisite hairpin and head ornament, it added a dignified and noble air. She was the eldest daughter of the Ning family, Ning Xiyuan. Seeing Ning Qinggang and his daughter enter the grand hall, young master Duanmu hurriedly got up and returned the greeting with a smile. "Uncle Ning, you're too kind. I feel as if I'm bathed in the spring breeze." Ji Tianxing did not say much and only nodded to Ning Qinggang. When he looked at young master Duanmu, he found that this person seemed to be exchanging pleasantries with Ning Qinggang on the surface, but was actually secretly glancing at Ning Xiyuan. Moreover, there was obviously a hint of admiration and affection in the depths of this person's eyes. After exchanging pleasantries, both sides sat down. Ning Qinggang sat in the main seat, while young master Duanmu and Ji Tianxing sat on the left and right guest seats respectively. However, the seat that Ning Xiyuan chose was thought-provoking. Originally, she could have sat in the lower seat, far away from Ning Qinggang, Duanmu, and Ji Tianxing. Young master Duanmu was very attentive and took the initiative to invite her to sit next to him. However, she smiled faintly and shook her head to decline. Then, she actually sat down next to Ji Tianxing. Seeing this, young master Duanmu was startled, and a trace of disappointment flashed across his eyes. Ji Tianxing saw it clearly and roughly understood the reason. "No wonder this little bastard mocked me as soon as we met. It seems that he thinks that I am also pursuing Ning Xiyuan and wants me to back out. Ha ha ha. Childish and ridiculous." Ji Tianxing shook his head and could not help but sigh. Ning Xiyuan saw this and asked calmly, "Young master Tianxing, is there something wrong? Why are you shaking your head and sighing?" Ning Qinggang also looked over with a questioning gaze. Before Ji Tianxing could answer, young master Duanmu explained with a smile, "Little sister Xiyuan, you are overthinking. I guess that tonight's banquet is too sumptuous, and the dishes prepared by your residents are too exquisite. Young master Tianxing is from Qingshan City and is used to the rough and unrestrained food. I am sure that you are not used to it, so you are shaking your head and sighing. Who couldn't understand such blatant mockery?" Ji Tianxing glanced at Duanmu expressionlessly and did not even bother to explain. Ning Qinggang looked at Ji Tianxing and then at Duanmu. He frowned secretly and was somewhat worried. Ning Siyuan looked straight at Duanmu and said in a neither servile nor overbearing tone, "Second Prince, you are the one who is overthinking. Young Master Tianxing is from Qingshan City, but he is not from Qingshan City. There is no such thing as his taste. Moreover, Second Prince is of noble status and has an extraordinary status. I am from a humble background, so I am not worthy of Second Prince calling me little sister. Please call me Miss Ning." She was clearly trying to distance herself. Young Master Duanmu's expression suddenly became unnatural. He smiled apologetically and said, "Miss Siyuan, you must be joking. How can there be a prince in front of you and Uncle Ning?" Ji Tianxing roughly understood what was going on. This young Master Duanmu was a descendant of the Bloodflame Divine Kingdom's royal family. He should be the second son of some prince, so he was called Second Prince. This person had a good relationship with the Ning family and admired Ning Siyuan a lot. He even seemed to be determined to win her over. Otherwise, he wouldn't have treated Ji Tianxing as a love rival the moment he saw him. Unfortunately, Ning Siyuan was not interested in Second Prince. At this moment, Ning Qinggang came out to smooth things over. He smiled and said, "Second Prince, young Master Tianxing, I originally wanted to entertain you two alone and give you a welcome dinner. However, you two happened to arrive on the same day, and I have been busy recently, so I neglected you two. No matter what, you are both young people. You should have something in common and get along well. Here, I propose a toast to the two of you. Welcome to the Ning family as guests." Ning Qinggang picked up the spirit wine and drank it all in one gulp. Ji Tianxing, Duanmu, and Ning Siyuan all picked up their wine cups and drank it all in silence. After putting down the wine cup, young Master Duanmu said with a smile, "Uncle Ning, I came this time because concubine Ning asked me to. Not only did I come to visit you and Miss Siyuan, but I also brought many gifts for concubine Ning. I will give them to you later. In addition, I learned from concubine Ning that next year's winter solstice will be a special day for Miss Siyuan. Uncle should have understood my intentions long ago. I am willing to do everything I can to help Miss Siyuan break through to the monarch realm." End of chapter. Chapter 29-26. Ji Tianxing drank his wine calmly. He had heard everything young Master Duanmu had said and analyzed many things. Concubine Ning. A woman from the Ning family is a princess consort? And the king's favorite concubine? No wonder the Ning family is different from ordinary aristocratic families and has a higher status than the princess's residence. Moreover, the second prince is obviously close to concubine Ning. As for next year's winter solstice, it's Ning Siyuan's special day? What's going on? Ji Tianxing's expression didn't change as he silently pondered. However, when he glanced at young Master Duanmu, he realized that he was also looking at him. His chin was slightly raised, and his eyes were even more arrogant, as if he was very proud of himself. Or as if he was deliberately showing off in front of him. Ji Tianxing only felt that it was childish and ridiculous and had no interest in talking. Ning Siyuan looked solemn and said in a serious tone, "Thank you for your concern, Second Prince, for bringing a gift for Aunt Concubine Ning. However, the Ning family's bloodline problem will be solved by the Ning family, so you don't have to worry about it. Moreover, Siyuan already had a marriage contract. Everyone knows about this, so how can you go against it? Please face this matter seriously, Second Prince, and don't have any illusions about the Ning family being unrighteous." Ning Qinggang coughed to remind her to save some face for young Master Duanmu, probably because her tone was a little harsh. Young Master Duanmu panicked when he heard that. How could he think too much? He couldn't help but say, "Sister Siyuan, are you talking about that good-for-nothing Qi from Qingshan City? Your engagement was set by uncle and the Qi family before you were born. Without your consent, how can this matter be taken into account? Moreover, that Qi fellow has a lowly status and weak abilities. His bloodline is also inferior. How can he be worthy of a proud daughter like you?" Before young Master Duanmu could finish, Ning Siyuan frowned and said in a cold voice, "Enough. Second Prince, no matter how useless Qi Huangji is, he is still my fiancé. Moreover, not long ago, the king conferred the title of Viscount to the head of Qingshan City. Your so-called good-for-nothing Chi fellow will inherit the title of Viscount and become the city lord in the future. Ah! Young Master Duanmu was stunned. He would never have thought that the always elegant and cold Ning Xiyuan would flip out at him in public for her good-for-nothing fiancé. This was too abnormal. Young Master Duanmu was a little confused. He couldn't help but mutter, so what if he's a Viscount and the city lord? It's just a small, run-down city on the border. How can it be compared to me? Ning Xiyuan frowned again and wanted to refute. At this time, Ning Qinggang said in a dignified tone, "Okay, let's not talk about this anymore." There were still more than 400 days until next year's winter solstice, so there was no hurry. Moreover, the second prince must have come to Tianfeng County for other reasons. Let's end tonight's banquet here. Please go back and rest early, young masters. Ning Qinggang knew his daughter's nature very well and knew what kind of person the second prince was. If he continued to be entangled, it would definitely cause even more unpleasant things to happen. Since that was the case, he could only temporarily end the banquet. Ning Qinggang got up to see them off. Ji Tianxing and Duanmu cupped their hands and bid farewell. But before the two of them could take a step, Ning Xiyuan turned and left first. Her footsteps were hurried, anger still lingering on her face. Ji Tianxing looked at her back and fell into deep thought. Young Master Duanmu also stared at her back as she disappeared into the darkness, feeling a little dejected. As for Ning Qinggang, he could only sigh silently in his heart. There was nothing else he could do. After all, the matter of next year's winter solstice not only concerned Ning Xiyuan's bloodline and divine path, but also her fate in marriage. Ji Tianxing left the reception hall and walked to the square outside the hall. He was about to return to Qingsong Courtyard on the left when young Master Duanmu called out to him. "Tianxing, stop." Young Master Duanmu followed and looked at Ji Tianxing with feigned dignity. He asked, "That good-for-nothing Qi Huanji has become the young city lord of Qingshan City. And you are also from Qingshan City. What's the relationship between you two?" Ji Tianxing sneered with a mocking expression. "Qi Huanji didn't offend you, did he? You keep calling him a good-for-nothing to show that you are a noble heir." Young Master Duanmu said coldly, "His status is lowly and his bloodline is weak, but he has an engagement with Xiyuan. This is blasphemy to the Ning family and Xiyuan, which means he has offended me." Ji Tianxing looked at him deeply and said calmly, "In my eyes, you are a noble heir with a superior bloodline, but you are not as good as Qi Huanji. At least Qi Huanji knows how to respect others, unlike you who is arrogant and brainless." Young Master Duanmu glared at him and scolded fiercely, "You are just a lowly commoner. How dare you humiliate me? If we weren't in Ning Mansion, I would have put you in prison and let you have a taste of the kingdom of God's law." Ji Tianxing looked at him and said with a contemptuous smile, "Don't find excuses for yourself. I am right here. Why don't you go and put me in prison? You." Young Master Duanmu was even angrier. He subconsciously raised his hand to slap Ji Tianxing. But he didn't lose his mind. He couldn't figure out Ji Tianxing's strength, and he was in Ning Mansion, so he could only suppress his anger and withdraw his hand. "Brat, I will remember you. No matter what you came to Ning Mansion for, I will not let you succeed. Also, you better not leave Ning Mansion." Young Master Duanmu hated Qi Huanji. Now that he saw Ji Tianxing protecting Qi Huanji and humiliating him, he hated Ji Tianxing as well. The sneer on Ji Tianxing's face deepened. He said with a contemptuous tone, "You are a noble heir, but you have neither brains nor strength. You only want to use your status to oppress others. The funniest thing is that you are overcautious and afraid of everything. You only know how to spout harsh words. You are a disgrace to your father and your grandpa monarch." Young Master Duanmu looked as if he was struck by lightning. His eyes instantly turned blood red, as if he had gone berserk. He was unable to restrain his anger. He glared at Ji Tianxing with a ferocious expression. He said with a hoarse voice, "Brat, you dare to insult my royal father. You are dead. No one can save you. I will kill you. I will definitely kill you." Young Master Duanmu seemed to have been stabbed in his sore spot. He revealed an extremely ferocious side. In his extreme anger, his entire body trembled, and dark red blood flames ignited. An earth-shattering murderous aura spread. Blood flames accumulated between his palms, and he was about to kill Ji Tianxing. Only then did Ji Tianxing use his divine sense to check his strength. Second level divine monarch realm. Not bad. But it was only not bad. Young Master Duanmu raised his palms and was about to release bloodblades to kill Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing, on the other hand, stood motionless in his original spot. He looked at him with an indifferent expression, without any intention of dodging. At this moment, a dignified and cold voice came from the guest hall. "Stop." Following the thunderous voice, a ball of dazzling icy blue divine light flew out of the hall and enveloped young Master Duanmu. Chapter 29-27. Ji Tianxing didn't need to look to know that it was Ning Qinggang who did it. In fact, he had expected it. After all, he and Duanmu Gongzi had just walked to the square, and Ning Qinggang was still in the hall. Swoosh! A blue light flashed. Ning Qinggang flew to the square and came to Ji Tianxing and Duanmu Gongzi. Duanmu Gongzi was unharmed. But he was wrapped in the icy light. Not only did his killing intent and anger disappear, but he also calmed down quickly. After 2 short breaths, he closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Then, the icy blue light dissipated. Ning Qinggang waved his hand, and 2 silver-armored guards came to listen to his orders. Send Duanmu Gongzi back to the guest room and let him rest. No one is to disturb him. The 2 silver-armored guards quickly carried Duanmu Gongzi back to the Bailan yard. Only Ji Tianxing and Ning Qinggang were left in the square. Ning Qinggang looked at him deeply, then turned and walked to the pine yard. "Mr. Tianxing, I want to talk to you." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and followed him back to the pine yard. They went to the study to talk. The 2 sat down in the study. The guards at the door were dismissed by Ning Qinggang. The maids who came to serve tea were also sent away. The people around the study left, and he and Ji Tianxing were alone. They wouldn't be disturbed, and it was impossible for anyone to eavesdrop on their conversation. Ning Qinggang looked at Ji Tianxing with shining eyes and said earnestly, "Mr. Tianxing, although this is the first time I've seen you, I've heard about your deeds from Tianlong. Besides, I also know about what happened in Tianfeng County after you left Qingshan City." Ning Qinggang directly stated that he knew about Ji Tianxing's deeds and his approximate strength. Thus, the 2 spoke frankly and avoided beating around the bush. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said, "I was thinking that the Ning family wouldn't dare to contact me after causing such a big commotion in Tianfeng County. Now it seems that I worried too much." Ning Qinggang nodded and said calmly, "Not to mention that you killed a princess, even if you annihilated a sect, the Ning family can handle it. These are all small matters. Only a few forces know about it. The nobles and royalty in the capital don't even pay much attention." Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "In that case, what you want to talk about should be about Mr. Duanmu Gongzi and Miss Siyuan." Ning Qinggang nodded again. He said, "The second prince's identity is special to be loved and cared for since he was a child, so he is inevitably a bit arrogant. But everyone will not to be to ss. In particular, never mention his father in front of him in the future, that's to his to his. Tonight, I will appease his anger and help you suppress this matter. But I won't be able to help you in the future." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "So, Mr. Duanmu Gongzi's father seems to have some secret story?" Ning Qinggang nodded and said, "Yes, this is a royal secret, so I can't reveal it. But you have to know that his father is the first prince. He sacrificed himself for the king 200 years ago." Ji Tianxing was startled, then nodded and said, "I see. This was the reason." Everything was clear now. After a moment of silence, he asked again, "Then Miss Siyuan's aunt, Consort Ning?" Ning Qinggang's expression softened at the mention of Consort Ning. He smiled and said, "She's my sister, the 3rd prince's wife." Ji Tianxing immediately understood. No wonder Ning Qinggang could be conferred the title of Viscount by the king when he accompanied Qi Tianlong to the capital. Moreover, the king's imperial envoy secretly helped Qi Tianlong become the lord of Qingshan City. It turned out that they were all on the 3rd prince's side. It was easier to do things with someone at the top. Ji Tianxing was thinking when Ning Qinggang said, "Forget it. Let's not talk about these things. I roughly understand that you're a free person who doesn't like to be restrained. So, you can come to the Ning family as a guest and don't need to be tainted by the Ning family's karma. I've also used my connections and sent people to investigate the matter that you asked Siyuan to help you with. Now that I have some clues, I can give you an explanation. Then, Ning Qinggang took out a dark gold jade slip from his spatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianxing. There's the information you want in here. Although it's not detailed enough and many things can't be confirmed. However, this is already the best that I can find. Then, he got up and left. Thank you. Ji Tianxing thanked him and saw him out of the study. After Ning Qinggang left, Ji Tianxing picked up the dark gold jade slip and used his divine sense to check its contents. There was a lot of information in the jade slip, and it was very messy. The most complete thing was a simple map of the divine realm. Half of this huge flat map was the ocean. It was divided into more than a dozen large sea regions by a few continents of different sizes. There was a huge continent in the upper left corner of the map. It was the Boundless Heaven continent. The map of the Boundless Heaven continent was more detailed. It clearly marked hundreds of regions, as well as the empires and factions in many regions. Ji Tianxing easily found the locations of the Great Yang Empire, Bloodfire Divine Kingdom, and Tianxue County at the northernmost tip of the continent. Of course, the famous mountains and forbidden areas in each region were also marked and annotated. Ji Tianxing understood that just this detailed map of the Boundless Heaven continent was not something that ordinary people could get. This map was priceless. Even if the price was tens of millions of divine stones, there would be people who would buy it. His gaze left the Boundless Heaven continent and looked at the upper right corner of the map. It was also a huge continent. The area was similar to the Boundless Heaven continent, but the shape was different. And this continent's map appeared very crude. It only drew a blurry diagram and marked the words Chenkuan continent. Apart from this, what regions, what factions, and terrain this continent had, it was all absent. Even Chenkuan continent, these 4 words had a question mark behind it. It indicated that this name was uncertain. Ji Tianxing looked at the lower left and lower right corners of the map again. Similarly, it was 2 huge continents. Only the rough outlines were drawn, and there was not even a name. Finally, Ji Tianxing looked at the middle of the map. Between the 4 continents was a vast ocean. In the middle of the ocean, there was a very small piece of land. Compared to the Boundless Heaven continent, this piece of land was 50 times smaller, only equivalent to 2 regions. But this piece of land without a name was marked in bright red. 2 eye-catching large words were written on it. Forbidden Area. Ji Tianxing immediately frowned, remembering this piece of land. He was very clear that the meaning of this forbidden area was different from those forbidden areas on the Boundless Heaven continent. Ordinary forbidden areas were just some dangerous special regions. Either the environment was vile, or there were powerhouses entrenched, or the geographical environment was special. However, divine kings who were powerful enough could still enter and leave at will, coming and going freely. But that forbidden area in the middle of the map absolutely did not mean this. It most likely meant that it was an absolutely forbidden area to enter. There were great dangers and secret. End of this chapter. Chapter 29-28. Other than the map, there was also a lot of information in the Jade Scroll. There was a lot of information and it was rather messy. It was basically all information about the Boundless Heaven continent. There were descriptions of the various regions and records of legends. Ji Tianxing carefully flipped through the pages, paying special attention to the legends from 1,000 years ago and comparing them with the events in his memory. After all, he had set foot on this continent before and had seen a lot of things. But it was a pity. He had read hundreds of legends, but there was only one ambiguous incident that matched his memory of the past. After a long time, he could only end his reading and put away the Jade Scroll. If the map of the God Realm that Ning Qinggang gave me is real, then there are some changes. The God Realm back then did not have 4 continents, and the land area was much larger than it is now. There is also the forbidden land in the middle of the 4 continents that did not exist before. Ji Tianxing stood in front of the window and stared at the night outside, deep in thought. The God realm is an eternal primary world. Logically speaking, the structure of the world should not change. What happened to change the structure of the God realm and make two more continents appear out of nowhere? Or perhaps one of the continents in the past was torn in half. Even a peak God king could not tear an entire continent apart. The more he thought about it, the more certain he was that something major must have happened in the God realm after he died. Thinking of this, he thought of the Heaven Punisher race. Right, the mastermind behind the Heaven Punisher race seems to have issued a secret order for the Heaven Punisher race to find the divine diagram. If the divine diagram that God Emperor is looking for is the Heaven Punishing diagram in my hands, that means the changes in the God realm might be related to the Heaven Punishing diagram. Ji Tianxing wanted to return to the peak as soon as possible and find out the truth of what happened 1,000 years ago to take revenge. However, he still knew nothing about the current situation in the God realm. The people and forces that he had come into contact with so far were like frogs at the bottom of a well. Only by continuing to climb higher and come into contact with more powerful forces and experts could he find more clues. At this moment, suddenly, a cold voice echoed in his mind. "Young Master Tianxing, can we meet for a chat?" As soon as Ji Tianxing heard this, he knew that this was Ning Xiyuan's voice transmission from outside the courtyard. He collected his thoughts and thought to himself, that girl Ning Xiyuan, why is she looking for me in the middle of the night again? He replied via telepathy, "All right, Pine Courtyard, study room." Then, he sat on the armchair in the study and waited quietly. About 100 breaths later, Ning Xiyuan pushed open the door and walked into the study. The two of them greeted each other. Ning Xiyuan and Ji Tianxing sat opposite each other with a desk between them. After pondering for a moment, Ning Xiyuan said, "I came late at night mainly to apologize to you. Tonight's banquet was very unpleasant. The reason is that my father didn't think it through and didn't make proper arrangements." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and said with a playful smile, "You don't have to apologize. This has nothing to do with you. Just a moment ago, your father told me about this matter. The main reason is because of the second prince, but I won't argue with him. He's just a spoiled child." Ning Xiyuan nodded and said, "You think so too?" Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Actually, what kind of person is your father? How could he be negligent in this aspect? I'm well aware that tonight's banquet was both a coincidence and a deliberate arrangement by your father." Ning Xiyuan's body shook and a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. She looked away and asked, Why would you think so?" Ji Tianxing said with a smile, "You should be very familiar with that second prince. Your father also knows his character and ability. Therefore, you and your father both look down on him. No matter how infatuated he is, he'll never be able to marry you. To be more snobbish, he's just an incompetent prince without a father. He'll never be able to ascend the throne. If you really want to climb up the social ladder, you can marry a prince with real power and a bright future." Ning Xiyuan hurriedly waved her hands and explained, "No, young Master Tianxing misunderstood. I definitely don't have such thoughts. I also don't like the rules of the royal family." Ji Tianxing didn't comment and continued, "Although the second prince has no chance, he doesn't know his own limits and is always thinking of ways to get close to you. The matter of next year's winter solstice should be related to your cultivation and your marriage." The second prince heard the news from concubine Ning and became anxious. Therefore, he couldn't wait to rush to the Ning residence and express his stance to you and your father. But your father would never agree, and he couldn't refuse him. So, your father used me to punish the second prince. Because your father guessed that the second prince must have seen me as a love rival. When she heard this, Ning Xiyuan's expression became somewhat awkward. She muttered, "So, you already guessed it?" Ji Tianxing spread his hands and asked in return, "Is it that hard to guess? Apart from that idiot, the second prince, who couldn't tell?" Ning Xiyuan pursed her lips and asked somewhat nervously, "Then you won't be angry, right?" "Why should I be angry?" Ji Tianxing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "This is a love triangle between you, Qi Huangji, and the second prince. What does it have to do with me? Besides, Qi Huangji loves you very much, and you'll abide by the marriage agreement. This is already set in stone. The second prince's love is purely one-sided. Even if I don't attack him, he won't be able to fulfill his wish. For some reason, Ning Xiyuan felt a little disappointed when she heard this. Perhaps it was because Ji Tianxing's tone was too relaxed and indifferent. Ning Xiyuan asked again in a low voice, "But because of me, you're hated by the second prince. This is unfair to you. Don't you hate us?" Ji Tianxing took out the dark gold jade slip and waved it in front of her. He smiled and said, "Your father has already compensated me. We're even." Ning Xiyuan frowned slightly and asked again, "But don't you want to know what next year's winter solstice means to me?" "Let me guess." Ji Tianxing thought for a moment and said, "It should be a problem with the Ning bloodline. At a certain time, you must fuse with another bloodline to break through the shackles. Only then can you break through to the divine sovereign realm. But fusing with the bloodline means that you have to marry and mix your bloodline with another man." Even though this question was a little embarrassing. However, Ning Xiyuan forgot about her embarrassment. Her heart was filled with shock and disbelief. Her first reaction was, "You've investigated the mystery of our Ning family's bloodline?" Ji Tianxing frowned and spread his hands. "Please, I've just arrived at Tianxue County City. How can I investigate your Ning family?" Ning Xiyuan shook her head repeatedly and exclaimed, "This is too inconceivable. You can even guess this? Did someone tell you or did you just guess?" Ji Tianxing felt a headache coming on. He said in a mocking tone, "Qi Huanji told me." "Impossible." Ning Xiyuan flatly denied and said resolutely and decisively, "Let alone him, even Uncle Qi wouldn't know." Ji Tianxing chuckled. "Isn't that the end of it? I really just guessed. Forget it, I don't want to argue with you about this. I came to Tianxue County this time to talk business with you." Chapter 29-29. Upon hearing that they were talking about serious matters, Ning Xiyuan wanted to take her leave. "Sir Tianxing, it's already late at night. You've traveled for half a month to reach Tianxue County City and haven't had a good rest yet. I won't disturb your rest. If there's anything, let's talk tomorrow. Goodbye." Ning Xiyuan bowed to him and left the study. Ji Tianxing frowned slightly. Looking at her departing back view, he could not help muttering, "Why is she a little strange? When talking about her feelings and marriage, she talks non-stop. Once talking about serious matters, she takes her leave in a hurry. What on earth does she want?" In Ji Tianxing's impression, Ning Xiyuan was not this kind of sentimental person. In the past, when she was at Qingshan City's Qi family, she was very cold and straightforward. Thinking for a while and not coming to a conclusion, Ji Tianxing simply did not fuss about this matter. He opened the secret door in the corner of the bedroom, entered the secret room, and meditated to cultivate. Although he had already refined all the divine spark fragments he obtained previously, now, the divine Tao laws that he grasped also reached a shocking 130. But he was still at the second-level divine lord realm. There was still a long way to go to the third-level divine lord realm. If he did not have any lucky chances, he would probably need to cultivate for several years before he could break through. His interspatial ring stored tens of billions worth of cultivation resources. Therefore, he did not feel any heartache when cultivating, using all kinds of divine crystals and divine pills to his heart's content. A night passed very quickly. The next morning, when the sun rose, in the White Orchid courtyard, Sir Duanmu, who was lying on the bed, gradually woke up. He slowly opened his eyes and sized up his surroundings. Only then did he discover that he was currently lying in the bedroom. Staring blankly for a moment, he then recalled what happened last night. Ji Tianxing's contemptuous face and insulting words were still vivid in his mind. The moment he recalled, Sir Duanmu still frowned. Anger surged in his heart. However, his current emotions were calmer. Even if he had resentment in his heart, it was not to the extent of finding Ji Tianxing to take revenge. After all, this was the Ning residence. Last night, Ning Qinggang had personally frozen him because he didn't want him to cause trouble in the Ning mansion. Thinking of this, young Master Duanmu's impression of Ning Qinggang dropped a lot. Uncle Ning has always been respectful and courteous to this prince. Because of imperial concubine Ning, the Ning family also took good care of me. But last night, in order to protect that mountain boy, Uncle Ning actually attacked me. Where did that bastard come from? Why did Uncle Ning protect him so much? Even Ning Siyuan is very protective of him. There must be something wrong here. The more young Master Duanmu thought about it, the angrier he got. He swore in his heart that he would definitely get rid of that brat in the future. At this moment, a burly young man in a green robe strode into the bedroom. Upon seeing that Duanmu Gongzi had already woken up, he hurriedly bowed to greet him. Greetings, second prince. You're finally awake. This young man was young Master Duanmu's personal guard, as well as his trusted aide. After leaving the capital and coming to Qianxue County, he had followed young Master Duanmu all the way. Young Master Duanmu sat on the edge of the bed and said expressionlessly, "Hu Lai, how are the preparations for the things I asked you to do?" Hu Lai hurriedly bowed and said, "Rest assured, young master. Those two things have been prepared." The royal capital had already sent experts, and they were rushing over as fast as they could. As for the business you want to discuss next, the list and conditions have been listed. The contract has also been prepared. Young Master Duanmu nodded slightly. A trace of malevolence flashed across his eyes as he murmured, Unless that boy stays in the Ning residence forever, he can forget about leaving Qianxue County alive. I wonder what the Ning family is thinking. Rejecting that engagement and marrying this crown prince is like joining forces with two strong people. In the future, the Ning family will leave Qianxue County and enter the capital. Becoming a top aristocratic family is also a matter of course. Ha ha ha. I can bring tens of billions worth of business to the Ning family by simply joining hands with a few aristocratic families. What can that uncouth mountain boy do? Even the clothes he is wearing are given by the Ning family. What a joke! In front of his trusted bodyguard, young Master Duanmu did not hide his hatred and contempt for Ji Tianxing. When he mentioned the power of the prince's residence and his prestige among the aristocrats, his expression was full of arrogance and confidence. In his opinion, that nameless brat was not even worthy of carrying his shoes. He was not qualified to compete for the Ning Siyuan and could not be a threat to him. However, Hu Lai's expression was somewhat strange. After hesitating for a moment, he said hesitantly, "Second young master, something happened last night." "I don't know if I should." Young Master Duanmu immediately frowned and asked in a deep voice, "What else happened last night?" "Don't hesitate, speak." Hu Lai hurriedly lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I followed your instructions and secretly watched Pine Tree Courtyard. After you were sent back last night, I saw Master Ning go to Pine Tree Courtyard. He seemed to have met with that boy alone and the two of them had a secret discussion in the study. Not long after, Miss Ning also visited Pine Tree Courtyard and entered the study. They stayed in the study for a long time and I don't know what they were doing. I did not dare to go near to avoid being discovered." After saying this, Hu Lai lowered his head deeply and did not dare to look at young Master Duanmu's expression. The room was dead silent. Young Master Duanmu was silent. As if he was struck by lightning, he stood rooted to the ground and stared blankly ahead. However, his hands were grabbing the edge of the bed especially hard and the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. The expression on his face also became very gloomy and had a trace of malevolence. After a long time, he suppressed his endless anger and sneered while gnashing his teeth, "Ha! A man and a woman alone in a room in the middle of the night and even dismissed all the guards and maids. That damn bastard, he even swore that he had no intention of climbing up the social ladder. How can there be such a shameless person in this world? What is so good about him? He actually made Siyuan speak so bluntly to me and be so attentive to him." Seeing that young Master Duanmu was extremely angry, Hu Lai hurriedly consoled him. "Second prince, please calm down. This is the Ning residence. Even if Miss Ning and that brat had something to do with each other, they would definitely avoid arousing suspicion. It's even more impossible for such a thing to happen. However, I think it's most likely that you humiliated that brat last night. After all, he is a guest of the Ning residence." Miss Ning was afraid that he would not be able to bear the humiliation, so she went to comfort him. Young Master Duanmu became even more furious and sneered. "That brat is shameless. Would he feel that he was humiliated? The one who was humiliated is me. Even if Ning Siyuan wanted to comfort him, why did she have to go in the middle of the night? Moreover, Why didn't she meet in the living room but dismissed her servants and had a secret meeting in the study? If she wasn't guilty, why did she have to be so secretive? This Hu Lai was speechless. He understood young Master Duanmu's personality. He was extreme and stubborn. He did not dare to persuade him anymore. Otherwise, young Master Duanmu would be even more irritable. After hesitating for a moment, he asked tentatively, "Second Prince, how do you plan to deal with this?" Young Master Duanmu said with a sinister expression, "I want to bathe and change my clothes. I will personally find Ning Qinggang and talk things out with him face to face." Chapter 29:30. When the sun rose. Ning Qinggang was handling official business in his study. The Ning family had too many properties and businesses. They were spread across 5 counties and over 60 cities. Most of the matters were decided by the accounts, elders, and deacons. However, he still had to personally check and approve the important matters. In recent years, the Ning family had expanded rapidly, and his work had become even busier. As he handled the matters, he thought to himself, "It's been 8 years, and I haven't had a good rest or cultivated in seclusion." No wonder Big Brother, who was favored by the elders, gave up at the last moment during the competition for the patriarch's position. If I had known, I would have given the position to Big Brother and cultivated in peace to pursue the divine king realm. But now, Big Brother is cultivating without any distractions and has a high chance of reaching the divine king realm. Meanwhile, I have to deal with mundane matters and deal with accounts every day. The more Ning Qinggang thought about it, the more tired he felt. He couldn't help but sigh. At this moment, the guard outside the study reported, "Patriarch, young Master Duanmu has come to visit. He says he has something important to discuss with you." "He's already awake." Ning Qinggang frowned slightly and muttered, "This little bastard won't continue to cause trouble for me because of what happened last night, right?" Although he was worried, he still put down the matters at hand and replied in a dignified tone, "Let him in." A moment later, young Master Duanmu, who was wearing a dragon-patterned golden robe, stepped into the study. Not only did he freshen up, but he also wore a golden dragon robe that only the royal family had the right to wear. He also wore a luxurious golden crown. His attire was very noble and formal. Ning Qinggang stood up and greeted him with a smile. "Second Prince, you're here? Why are you looking for Uncle so early in the morning instead of sleeping a little?" Young Master Duanmu nodded slightly and replied calmly, "If it weren't for Uncle, how could I have slept so well last night? Speaking of which, I have to thank you. I haven't had a good rest in a long time." Ning Qinggang heard the sarcasm in his words, but he didn't continue. He smiled and said, "No wonder you're so refreshed and dignified this morning. By the way, you must be here for business, right?" Duanmu Gongzi did not waste any more time and sat down on the big chair in front of him. He took out an account book from his space ring and handed it to Ning Qinggang. He smiled and said, "Uncle has guessed correctly. I've come for that business." He sat boldly on the large jade chair and said with a confident smile, "Previously in the capital, this prince had sent a message to Uncle and mentioned this transaction. I wanted to help the Ning family and help Uncle expand his business and social connections, so I paid more attention. At a certain banquet in the royal city, I expressed my intentions. Immediately, 3 influential families expressed their willingness to cooperate with the Ning family." Speaking up to this point, he pointed to the account book on the table and smiled. "The 3 noble families are all feudal officials with close to 10,000 people under their command and tens of thousands of private armies. Every few years, they would purchase large quantities of supplies like this. Based on my rough estimation, the total value is about 9 billion god stones. With the Ning family's strength, they should be able to take on this order, and the profits should be at least 20%. Therefore, this prince helped the Ning family to take it. If this cooperation is successful, the 3 noble families will become frequent guests of the Ning family in the future. The Ning family's wealth was far more than 100 billion and very close to 1 trillion. However, this kind of business worth tens of billions was not common for the Ning family. Even with Ning Qinggang's vast experience, he could not help but be surprised and look at Duanmu Gongzi in surprise. "Second Prince, Your status is honorable and you have considerable prestige among the noble families of the royal city. You are probably the only one who can help the Ning family take on a business worth tens of billions while talking and laughing. Uncle will remember second prince's kind intentions. Ning Qinggang cupped his fists and expressed his gratitude to Duanmu Gongzi. Then he picked up the account book and carefully looked at the items and contents inside. Duanmu Gongzi saw his surprised expression and sincere gratitude. He only felt happy and secretly proud of himself. Ha ha ha, he must not have thought that this prince would have such face and courage to help him take on a business worth tens of billions. Looking at his surprised expression, he must have a whole new level of respect for me. This is just the appetizer. As long as you let this prince marry Siyuan and become the son-in-law of the Ning family. In the future, with just a few words from this prince, the Ning family will be able to reach a higher level. Duanmu Gongzi looked at Ning Qinggang with a smile and thought to himself, self-satisfied. However, Ning Qinggang held the account book and flipped through most of it. Then he frowned. After he patiently finished reading the account book, he fell into deep thought. Seeing his reaction, Duanmu Gongzi stopped smiling and asked, "What's wrong? Uncle Ning, why are you frowning? Could it be that the Ning family is unable to complete this transaction with its financial and material resources?" Ning Qinggang put down the account book and shook his head. "Second prince, the things that these three noble families want to purchase are not the main business of the Ning family. You also know that the Ning family mainly deals in gems, cloth, pet beasts, and elixirs. Weapons, armor, and talisman materials are the side business of the Ning family, and the scale is not too big. But the things that these three noble families want are mainly weapons and armor, followed by elixirs and talismans. The elixirs are fine. The Ning family can immediately take out 120,000 heaven-level divine elixirs and tens of thousands of low-grade monarch divine elixirs. But those heaven-level and monarch divine elixirs will take some time to make. Especially the weapons and armor that they want. There are more than 40,000 heaven-level weapons and more than 1,000 monarch weapons. The Ning family can't take out these goods at the moment." Duanmu Gongzi frowned and asked, "Uncle Ning, isn't it written clearly on the list of goods? You don't have to deliver the goods immediately. You just have to make them within a month and deliver them on time." Ning Qinggang shook his head again and smiled bitterly. "Second prince, you don't know. Refining weapons and armor is not the main business of the Ning family. We don't store large quantities of goods. We take orders first and then arrange workshops to refine according to the buyer's request. The number of workshops for refining weapons and armor is limited. Even if we rush through the night, we can't make more than 40,000 sets of weapons and armor in a month. What's more, there are more than 1,000 sets of monarch weapons. It will take half a month." Duanmu Gongzi frowned and asked unwillingly, "Then if the Ning family works hard, how long will it take to deliver the goods?" Ning Qinggang thought for a moment and said solemnly, "It will take at least 2 months to deliver everything." Duanmu Gongzi immediately shook his head and said, "That won't do. The buyer won't wait. Uncle Ning, if you really can't do it, then this business. I can only reject it." Duanmu Gongzi felt a little regretful when he said this. After all, if this business could be done, the Ning family would owe him a favor. Chapter 2931. Ning Qinggang was the head of the family. His mission was to make the Ning family grow and prosper forever. The Ning family was an aristocratic family as well as a business family. There was no reason to reject a business that could be made money. However, the second prince knew nothing about business. Even if he could get business for the Ning family, he didn't agree on the terms. Even if Ning Qinggang wanted to accept his kindness, he couldn't accept the order. It was too difficult. Ning Qinggang couldn't help but sigh. The second prince is still too young. How would he know about this? The Ning family isn't a family of refining weapons and equipment. The Ning family isn't a family of refining weapons. If you can get a business deal for the Ning family to get 40,000 pets in a month, I can arrange everything for you. The study fell into silence. Ning Qinggang and young Master Duanmu looked at each other helplessly. "Uncle Ning, there's really nothing we can do. Second prince, If the Ning family can really do it, why would I not do the business? Sigh, at this moment. The guard's voice came from outside the study again. Master, young Master Tianxing wants to see you. He says he has something important to discuss. The guard's words were exactly the same as before. Only the name was changed. The other words were the same. Young Master Duanmu frowned when he heard the words young Master Tianxing. A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Ning Qinggang hesitated and said, Second Prince, young Master Tianxing has something to discuss with me. Why don't you go back to the Bailan courtyard and rest? If there's progress, I'll talk to you in detail. Of course, he was just being polite. What progress could there be if the Ning family couldn't do it at all? Young Master Duanmu thought for a while and shook his head. No need. I'm also very curious. What important matter could that kid have to discuss with you in private? It was obvious that he wasn't going to leave. Ning Qinggang frowned and said tactfully, Second Prince, no matter what young Master Tianxing has to do, it's between me and him. It's not appropriate for you to stay here and observe, is it? However, young Master Duanmu had no intention of getting up. He smiled playfully and said, What's wrong with that? As long as he's talking about proper matters, he's not afraid that I'll overhear. Unless he has some unspeakable secret or dirty thoughts. You. Ning Qinggang wanted to get angry, but he held back. He could tell that the second crown prince was going to pester him because of his high status. No one would dare to do anything to him since he was the crown prince. Suppressing his anger, Ning Qinggang said loudly and expressionlessly, Please invite child Tianxing in. The guard outside the door responded. After a while, Ji Tianxing, who was dressed in a white robe with starry patterns, stepped into the study. Even though he didn't specially dress up today, he was still in the same clothes as last night. However, he was handsome and valiant to begin with, and he had the mysterious and dignified aura of an expert. The moment he stepped into the study room, his aura completely overshadowed young Master Duanmu. As the saying goes, when enemies meet, their eyes blaze with hatred. From the moment he entered the study room, young Master Duanmu stared at him coldly without hiding his hatred. However, Ji Tianxing ignored young Master Duanmu and greeted Ning Qinggang naturally. Greetings, Master Ning. Ning Qinggang nodded slightly and said, Child Tianxing is here. Please sit down. Ji Tianxing glanced at young Master Duanmu and asked Ning Qinggang with a smile, Oh, young Master Duanmu is also here. Are you in a meeting? I'm really sorry. I seem to have come at the wrong time to disturb you. Why don't I leave first and talk to Master Ning in detail later? Ning Qinggang sighed inwardly when he saw that Ning Qinggang's attitude was dignified and his expression and tone were quite refined. Alas, the dignified crown prince is childish, simple-minded, and has a low EQ. However, this child Tianxing of unknown origin is in high spirits and is truly dignified. If the second crown prince has his temperament and means, he will be able to do whatever he wants in the royal family. Ning Qinggang was a little distracted. When he came back to his senses and was about to answer Ji Tianxing, young Master Duanmu beat him to it. Uncle Ning and I are talking about a business worth 10 billion. Of course, it's important. However, I don't know what business child Tianxing has with Uncle Ning. Is it difficult to talk about? Then why did you turn around and leave when you saw that I was here? Young Master Duanmu stared at Ji Tianxing with a half-smile, as if he was going to humiliate him. Ji Tianxing was not angry at all. There was no anger in his eyes and expression. He even smiled and said, What a coincidence. The business I'm talking to Master Ning about is also a business worth 10 billion. Ning Qinggang was stunned and looked incredulous. However, he immediately reacted and did not know whether to laugh or cry. He said, Child Tianxing, what happened last night is already in the past. I tried to persuade the second crown prince. He is magnanimous and will not argue with you. Why are you still angry with him? Obviously, Ning Qinggang concluded that Ji Tianxing was deliberately mocking the second crown prince. In his opinion, Ji Tianxing used to be a consecrator of the Qi family. How much income and wealth could he have? He did not have any power behind him. How could he talk about a business worth 10 billion with the Ning family? Since Ning Qinggang had such a reaction, young Master Duanmu's reaction was even more exaggerated. After being stunned for a moment, he looked up and laughed. Ha ha ha, thank you, child Tianxing. This is the funniest joke I've heard this year. Ji Tianxing ignored him and looked at Ning Qinggang. He said seriously, Master Ning, I'm not joking with you. I have 50,000 sets of divine equipment and 50,000 pearls. I've been looking for a chance to deal with them. However, ordinary wealthy families do not have the financial resources. After thinking about it, I think only the Ning family can buy this batch of goods. Hearing this, Ning Qinggang and young Master Duanmu were both stunned. Ning Qinggang raised his eyebrows and stared at him with burning eyes. He asked in a serious tone, Child Tianxing, are you serious? Before Ji Tianxing could answer, young Master Duanmu stood up and pointed at Ji Tianxing. He shouted coldly, Boy, what do you mean? Haven't you had enough? Did you eavesdrop on my conversation with Uncle Ning and deliberately mock me? I was right. You are a sinister and despicable villain. As soon as he said that, the atmosphere in the study froze. Even the temperature dropped to the freezing point. Visible frost formed on the ground. Ji Tianxing's face darkened. He looked at young Master Duanmu coldly and said in a cold tone, You should feel lucky that you are in the Ning family at this moment. Otherwise, you would be dead by now. An invisible and powerful aura enveloped young Master Duanmu, making his body stiff and unable to move. He only felt awe and fear from his divine soul. Cold sweat broke out on his back. Even Ning Qinggang on the side was shocked by Ji Tianxing's power. A strong fear arose in his heart and he subconsciously took a step back. Chapter 2932. Although Ning Qinggang was a 7th degree upper-level divine lord, in the entire Tianxue County, he was one of the strongest. But Ji Tianxing's invisible power was a suppression on the god's soul level. It was as if he was born nobler than other gods and had supreme majesty. Ning Qinggang was shocked as he looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. He thought to himself, where did this boy come from? Why is he so mysterious and monstrous? He must have just broken through to the Divine Lord realm not long ago, but he could kill so many middle-level Divine Lords. Now, even I, a high-level Divine Lord, am suppressed by his aura. It's too strange. Young Master Duanmu was still in shock. His eyes were wide and filled with fear. His forehead and back were still dripping with cold sweat. At that moment, his god's soul was suppressed. It was as if he saw a boundless sea of blood and purgatory, falling into the abyss of reincarnation. He did not want to experience that kind of horror a second time. So, when Ji Tianxing withdrew his power, he wisely chose to shut up. Ji Tianxing's expression returned to calmness. He looked at Ning Qinggang and took out 2 interspatial rings. These are the goods I want to deal with. Patriarch Ning, please check them yourself. 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment and 50,000 North Sea pearls. As long as the price is right, I will trouble the Ning family to deal with them on my behalf. I can give you 10% of the labor. Ning Qinggang suppressed the shock and distracting thoughts in his heart and quickly picked up the 2 interspatial rings to check carefully. Sure enough, there were 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment in the interspatial ring on the left. Although there was nothing special about these middle-level heavenly god weapons and armors, the divine formations attached to the equipment were all relatively common and practical formations. The style of the weapons and armors were roughly the same, but there were no inscriptions or emblems. Any force could use them. Ning Qinggang used his divine sense to check. There were 50,000 sets, not one less. He then used his divine sense to check the interspatial ring on the right. There were 50,000 North Sea pearls. Each of them was the size of a pigeon's egg. They were crystal clear and emitted a dense white light, containing abundant divine power. It's true. Ning Qinggang retracted his divine sense and looked deeply at Ji Tianxing. He asked in disbelief, there is something I shouldn't ask, but I can't help it. I wonder where young Master Tianxing obtained so many heavenly deity equipment and pearls. Ji Tianxing said indifferently, I picked it up. Ning Qinggang paused for a moment, then immediately understood what he meant. Even if it was picked up, it should have been picked up from the treasury of some force, right? For example, The city lord's mansion of Qingshan City? Ning Qinggang had an answer in his heart. At this moment, Ji Tianxing asked again, "Just now, young Master Duanmu had an intense reaction and even said that I was eavesdropping on your conversation. If I didn't guess wrongly, the $10 billion business that young Master Duanmu mentioned is also related to weapons and equipment, right?" Young Master Duanmu didn't look too good. He snorted coldly and didn't bother to answer. Ning Qinggang nodded slightly and explained, "The second prince wanted to help the Ning family attract business, so he found 3 influential families in the capital and placed orders worth 10 billion with the Ning family. There were more than 40,000 sets of heavenly deity equipment and more than 1,000 sets of monarch equipment in the orders. However, the Ning family's main business wasn't refining weapons. The Ning family couldn't deliver the goods within the 1-month deadline set by the buyer, so the business naturally couldn't be done. Now, with the 50,000 sets of equipment sent by young Master Tianxing, everything is easily solved. You've really helped the Ning family a lot. You've provided timely help. On behalf of the Ning family, I express my most sincere gratitude to young Master Tianxing." As he spoke, Ning Qinggang cupped his fists with a solemn expression and bowed to Ji Tianxing to express his gratitude. Ji Tianxing said indifferently, "That's really a coincidence. I originally wanted to trouble the Ning family to handle this batch of goods for me. Since I can help the Ning family, I'm more than happy to do so." Ning Qinggang smiled and said firmly, "Young Master Tianxing, don't worry. I'll help you handle these 50,000 sets of equipment and pearls. I guarantee a fair price. Moreover, you've helped the Ning family. We can't thank you enough. How can we charge you for your hard work?" Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "All right, then Master Ning can do as you see fit. After this batch of goods is dealt with, I'll need divine crystals or divine stones. Monarch divine pills for healing and cultivation are also fine." Ning Qinggang quickly patted his chest and said, "Young Master Tianxing, don't worry. Leave it to me. Divine crystals are rare, so it's difficult to get a large amount. I can only try my best to exchange them for divine stones and divine pills." "All right, then it's settled." Ji Tianxing nodded again and left the study. After he left, Ning Qinggang put away the spatial ring with a gratified expression. Then, he picked up the account book on the table and said to young Master Duanmu, "Second Prince, you can now tell the 3 influential families that the Ning family will take this business. The Ning family guarantees to deliver the goods on time within a month." After saying that, Ning Qinggang sat down and prepared to deal with this matter. Young Master Duanmu looked at him in a daze. His mouth opened a few times, but he couldn't say anything. After a long time, he suppressed his depression and said with cupped hands, "Since that's the case, then this nephew will take his leave." After walking out of the study, his face fell, and he walked quickly to the White Orchid courtyard with a gloomy face. Just as he entered the White Orchid courtyard, Hu Lai greeted him with a smile and said respectfully, "Second Prince, you've finished talking with Master Ning? What's the result?" "You helped the Ning family attract tens of billions of business and also took in 3 regular customers. Master Ning must have a whole new level of respect for you and be very grateful, right? As long as Master Ning thinks highly of you, Miss Ning will soon understand your good intentions and change her mind." Hu Lai flattered with all his might. But the more young Master Duanmu listened, the more irritated he became. Finally, he couldn't bear it and kicked him to the ground. "Shut up." Hu Lai lay on the ground with a wronged face and didn't dare to get up. He looked at young Master Duanmu in a daze and asked carefully, "Second Prince, what's wrong with you? Did the talk break down?" Young Master Duanmu clenched his fists and cracked them. He gritted his teeth and cursed, "Tianxing, that bastard. Despicable bastard. I spent a lot of effort to get this opportunity to help the Ning family and make Ning Qinggang see me in a new light. Everything was going smoothly, so why did he jump out? The Ning family couldn't refine that batch of goods on time, so why could he take it out? It was clearly me who attracted the business, so why did it help him in the end and become his credit?" Ning Qinggang thanked him profusely and thought highly of him, but turned a blind eye to my effort. "Damn it. That damned bastard, did he come here specifically to go against me?" Young Master Duanmu was furious and roared like the wind and thunder. From his words, Hu Lai could roughly guess the reason, and he was quite surprised. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Even a force like the Ning family can't store 50,000 sets of god equipment. That kid is unknown, so how could he take it out so casually? Second Prince, that kid's identity and motive are too problematic. You can make a fuss about it. Chapter 2933. Hu Lai's words reminded young Master Duanmu of something. He quickly calmed down, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. That's right. That guy's background is unknown, and he seems to have an inexplicable relationship with the Qi family. He clearly had no status or background, but his arrogance came from his bones, and his strength seemed to be not bad. Moreover, he seems to be targeting me and going against me at every turn. This is too strange. Young Master Duanmu murmured to himself. Soon, he had an idea. Hu Lai, immediately send a message to the Evil Blood Palace and ask them to investigate Tianxing's background. If there's a suitable opportunity, it's best to kill him and eliminate all future troubles. Hu Lai nodded his head without hesitation and acknowledged the order. Then, he left to help young Master Duanmu pass the message. It was noon. The Ning mansion was bustling with activity. Ning Qinggang left the Ning mansion to deal with the 50,000 sets of Divine Realm equipment. He personally met with other merchants to discuss this matter. In addition, he had to arrange for the Ning family's workshop to refine more than 1,000 sets of monarch equipment as soon as possible. Ning Xiyuan was also not in the mansion. He personally escorted a batch of important goods to the neighboring county. It would take about a week for him to return. Ji Tianxing was very idle. Besides resting and meditating in the pine tree courtyard, there was nothing else to do. Of course, he pretended to be idle. In fact, he had been waiting for news from the Crimson Blade sect. He had intimidated Envoy Jin, and Envoy Jin had agreed to pass on his message to the sect master. However, it was still unknown whether the sect master would be willing to cooperate. Ji Tianxing meditated in the secret chamber for the whole afternoon. In the evening, a guard came to the door of the secret chamber and reported, "Young Master Tianxing, someone sent a secret letter to the mansion and asked for you." Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. The guard bowed and handed over a blood-red jade slip to him. He waved his hand to signal the guard to leave. Then, he used his divine sense to check the message in the jade slip. The content of the jade slip was very simple. There was only one short sentence. "Tonight, at the 9 Li slope outside the city, I will be waiting for you, young master." Upon seeing this message, Ji Tianxing knew that it was a secret letter from left emissary Jin. He put the jade tag away and muttered to himself, "Looks like there's an 80% chance that we can work together." Therefore, he made some preparations and left Pine Tree Courtyard. Walking out of the huge Ning mansion, he walked along the crowded street, heading towards the South City Gate at a leisurely pace. By the time he walked out of the county city, night had already fallen. Ji Tianxing remained vigilant. After making sure that no one was following them, he flew into the night sky and headed south. The 9-mile slope was a desolate slope 3,000 miles south of the county city. The slope was 9 miles in height and width. Many passing caravans would set up camp here to rest. As time passed, this place became a landmark outside of the Qianxue County. Shua. Under the pitch-black night, Ji Tianxing streaked across the sky like a ghost and landed on the 9-mile slope. Standing at the top of the slope, he keenly observed the surroundings. The night wind was cold. The barren slope was surrounded by shadows of trees. There were even roars of beasts in the distance. However, no one appeared. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense to cover the entire 9-mile slope and carefully investigate. He quickly discovered that there was a faint fluctuation of divine power hidden deep underground. Therefore, he calmly said, "I'm already here. There's no need for left emissary Jin to hide, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd fell silent. Only then did the expert who had been hiding underground fly out and stand at the top of the slope. This was a majestic middle-aged man wearing a golden robe. His face was resolute and his hair was grey. It was left emissary Jin. He laughed loudly, "I'm hiding like this to keep it a secret. I've made a fool of myself in front of young Master Tianxing." Ji Tianxing lightly shook his head. It's fine. Just get to the point. Left emissary Jin secretly released his divine sense to investigate the surroundings several thousand miles. Seeing that no one was following or ambushing him, he was completely relieved. He took out a dark gold scroll from his spatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Young Master Tianxing, regarding the cooperation you mentioned before, I've already reported it to the sect master. After the discussion between the sect master and several elders, they have unanimously agreed to your request and accept this cooperation. The sect master values you very much. He hopes that our cooperation this time can successfully achieve our goal. Take a look. This is an agreement written by the sect master himself to express our sincerity in cooperation. Ji Tianxing reached out and took the golden scroll. He only opened it and casually glanced at it before putting it away. Things like contracts are only used to restrain the weak. If the strong want to break the contract, a contract alone can't change anything. Therefore, the key to the problem is whether the two sides are strong enough. Left emissary Jin was startled for a moment before nodding. Young Master Tianxing's words are reasonable. In today's world, the strong are indeed respected. Many forces and experts schemed against each other and changed their orders from day to night. Even if an agreement is signed in front of everyone, it can be broken for the sake of benefits. But please rest assured, young Master Tianxing. Our Bloodblade sect is definitely not that shameless. Ji Tianxing said in a mocking tone, even if the Bloodblade sect wants to break the agreement, I don't care. In any case, even without the Bloodblade sect's help, I'll still destroy the Bloodsword sect. But if the Bloodblade sect breaks the agreement, then I'll just destroy them. It's not a troublesome matter. Left emissary Jin's cheeks twitched and his expression was somewhat awkward. But he remained silent and didn't respond to Ji Tianxing's words. After putting away the golden scroll, Ji Tianxing asked, all right, since we've reached an agreement, can I ask Left emissary Jin to tell me about your sect's plans and plans? Left emissary Jin nodded slightly and explained, young Master Tianxing, please don't be impatient. When I left the sect master had already gathered all the elders to discuss the operation plan. If I'm not wrong, I'll be able to give you an answer in 2 or 3 days at most. During this period, young Master Tianxing only needs to wait patiently. When the sect decides on the operation, I'll inform you in private. I hope you can cooperate when the time comes. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, all right, it's settled then. With that, he prepared to turn and leave. But Left emissary Jin called out, young Master Tianxing, please wait. Ji Tianxing turned to look at him and asked, what's wrong? Is there something else? Left emissary Jin said with a solemn expression, young Master Tianxing, there's something I must remind you of. Although the Bloodsword sect has been keeping a low profile and hasn't made a move against you. But our sect spies have found out that the Bloodsword sect is secretly mobilizing troops to strengthen their defense. At the same time, the Bloodsword sect has also invited 3 overseas experts to deal with you. The Bloodsword sect tried to assassinate you before, but they failed miserably. This time, they'll definitely go all out. You must be careful. Chapter 2934. After discussing business with Ji Tianxing, Left emissary Jin took his leave. He burrowed into the ground and soon disappeared. Ji Tianxing did not stay any longer and returned to Qianxue County. On the way back, he was still thinking. Left emissary Jin's style was a reflection of the Bloody Blade sect. They were cautious, secretive, and decisive. This was the style of the Evil Path sect. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianxing was still 2,000 miles away from the South City Gate. He passed by a majestic mountain range and flew over a valley. All of a sudden, a dazzling lightning sword light lit up in the valley and attacked like lightning. The lightning sword was 100 meters long and contained 12 types of law power. It was incomparably violent, and its divine might was vast. In an instant, the lightning sword was in front of Ji Tianxing. He did not panic and punched out a dark golden fist light with his right hand. Kaboom! The huge golden fist shadow hit the sword of lightning with a deafening roar. The sword light and the fist shadow collapsed at the same time, splashing out divine light fragments. The surging energy spread in all directions. The two mountains nearby also shook violently from the impact and cracked. Ji Tianxing was about to release his divine sense to find the person who attacked him. At that moment, a 1,000-foot-long blood dragon shadow suddenly appeared on the mountain in front of him and attacked him. The mountain peak behind him also lit up with dazzling divine light. 9 pitch-black blades of death attacked him. Ji Tianxing was attacked from the front and back. He immediately determined that there were at least 3 divine lords ambushing him. However, he did not panic. He slashed out a huge golden blade with his left hand and slashed at the blood dragon in front of him. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and slashed out 12 sword lights to meet the blades of death. Kaboom! With a loud sound, the huge golden blade shattered the blood dragon shadow. Bam! 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 At the same time, the 12 sword lights slashed at the blades of death and shattered them. The attacks of the 3 divine lord powerhouses were all resolved by Ji Tianxing. He held a sword spell in his left hand and the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand. He stood in the night sky with an indifferent look on his face. His divine sense covered a radius of 3,000 miles. Only at this time did he discover that this area indeed had 3 divine lord powerhouses. One of them was hiding in the valley, while the other 2 were on the 2 mountain peaks. They were all middle-level god monarchs of the 6th degree realm and their divine power auras were thick and vigorous. Ji Tianxing frowned and thought to himself, when I passed by this place before, I used my divine sense to investigate, but I didn't find anyone lying in ambush here. Why are there 3 divine lords trying to assassinate me on the way back to the city? From the looks of it, they had been hiding in the county city. After following me out of the city, they chose to kill me here. In such a short period of time, they shouldn't have been able to set up a large formation. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, he saw a bloody light blooming in the valley. Shua! In the next instant, the blood-red light spread out in all directions, covering a radius of 300 miles. In a short period of time, an oval-shaped blood-red light screen sealed off the entire area. Ji Tianxing was within the blood-red light screen and was immediately suppressed by the power of the formation. His entire body's blood and qi were boiling and surging as though it was about to explode. Therefore, he could only circulate his divine power and secret techniques to suppress the surging blood and qi. After 2 breaths, his blood and qi calmed down. At this time, the 3 divine lords appeared one after another. Shua! 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 The divine lord who flew out of the valley was a dark old man wearing a blood-red robe. He didn't look very impressive. The divine lord who was hiding in the mountain peak in front was a burly man in golden armor with a head full of purple hair and a valiant aura. The divine lord who flew out from the mountain peak behind was a mysterious man wearing a black robe and a bronze mask. The 3 divine lords came to the night sky and formed a triangular formation, surrounding Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing sized them up coldly as he thought to himself, Left emissary Jin just reminded me to be careful of Bloodsword sect's revenge and ambush. I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, I would be ambushed. The Bloodsword sect is actually so impatient. That doesn't seem right. The Bloodsword sect should know that just 3 mid-god lords might not be able to kill me. Could it be that they still have a backup plan? These 3 middle-level divine lords are just cannon fodder in the vanguard. With this in mind, Ji Tianxing contemptuously sneered, "Do the scoundrels of the Bloodsword sect only know how to use such despicable sneak attacks? Don't think that you can fool this lord just because you've changed your appearance." The golden-armored man and the dark old man were clearly taken aback by his words. The 2 frowned as they cast doubtful glances at the mysterious man. The mysterious man didn't react. He only secretly used his arts to draw in the blood barrier's energy and weaken Ji Tianxing's fighting strength. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing frowned as he thought to himself, from the reactions of those 2, it seems a little strange. Could it be that they aren't from the Bloodsword sect? But besides the Bloodsword sect, who else would send 3 mid-god lords to kill me? Ji Tianxing inwardly speculated. At this time, the blood barrier's power doubled and its color turned deep purple. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to investigate and discovered that this wasn't a monarch-grade divine array. Instead, it was a monarch-grade high-grade divine artifact that had temporarily formed a law domain. It seemed to be a law related to bloodlines. Within this domain, one's blood energy would be drawn in and suppressed. Thus, he pretended that his blood energy was boiling, his face turning red and his aura becoming chaotic. His fighting strength immediately fell by 30% and he became somewhat weak, unable to bear the burden. Just who are you people? Why are you trying to kill this lord here? Ji Tianxing clutched his chest, his expression pained and indignant as he asked. Seeing that he couldn't bear the suppression of the law domain, the three mid-god lords relaxed and became much more confident. The black-robed man wearing the bronze mask coldly shouted in a low and hoarse voice, "Brat, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. In any case, you will undoubtedly die tonight. Because you provoked someone you shouldn't have and took something you shouldn't have." Ji Tianxing frowned and asked in confusion, "Who did I provoke? What did I take?" The black-robed man coldly shouted, "Don't play dumb with this lord. What about the 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment? Hand them over immediately and this lord can leave you with an intact corpse." Hearing these two sentences, Ji Tianxing was stunned. He never expected that the other party was actually here for the 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. This proved that they were indeed not from the Bloodsword sect. If they weren't from the Bloodsword sect, then which force were they from? Ji Tianxing silently analyzed. The only people who knew about the 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment were the Qingshan City Lord, the Black Mermaid King, Qi Tianlong, and Ning Qinggang. Of course, there was also Duanmu Air. Thinking of Duanmu Air, Ji Tianxing's eyes flashed with a cold light. Could it be him? If it's him, then he should know that I've already given the heavenly god equipment to Ning Qinggang. Chapter 2935. This morning. When Ji Tianxing handed the 50,000 sets of heaven god equipment to Ning Qinggang, Duanmu Air was also present. If Duanmu Air wanted those equipment, there was no reason for him to send people to kill him here. Unless Duanmu Air was just using this as an excuse. His real motive was to get rid of him. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing was a little uncertain. Duanmu Air hates me, but he's just a useless hedonistic heir. He shouldn't be so scheming as to send people to kill me tonight. The identities of these three Sir Gods should have nothing to do with Duanmu Air. If it had nothing to do with Duanmu Air, the Qi and Ning families wouldn't betray him. Thus, the answer was obvious. It should have something to do with the Qingshan City Lord and Princess Tianfeng. Ji Tianxing looked at the black-robed man and pretended to be confused as he asked, 50,000 sets of heaven god equipment. What do you mean? Where did I get so many heaven god equipment? Also, as a Sir God, what use do I have for heaven god equipment? The black-robed man didn't seem to have much patience as he shouted angrily, "Little bastard, don't play dumb with me. Before we took action, we already investigated what happened in Qingshan City and Black Shark Island. You killed the Qingshan City Lord, tricked the Black Shark King, and took the 50,000 sets of heaven god equipment for yourself. Do you think you've done it secretly? I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Hand over the goods now. Otherwise, I'll suck your blood dry and make you suffer in hell." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing was basically sure. The factions that these three Sir Gods belonged to must have something to do with the Qingshan City Lord. When he had obtained the 50,000 sets of heaven god equipment, Bai Long had asked him why the Qingshan City Lord was forging so many sets of equipment. At that time, he didn't think much about it and explained to Bai Long that these sets of heaven god equipment could be traded as currency. Just think of it as hoarding assets. Now, Ji Tianxing finally understood. No wonder the Qingshan City Lord forged the 50,000 sets of heaven god equipment. It's most likely for a certain faction. After I took the equipment, that faction sent experts to investigate and finally tracked me down here. Since he understood the reason, Ji Tianxing didn't pretend anymore. He channeled his divine power and performed his divine abilities and secret techniques, immediately calming down his surging blood essence. His flushed face and body quickly returned to normal. He looked at the black-robed man with a mocking expression and sneered, "Since you've already investigated clearly, there's nothing more to say. The thing you want is indeed in my hands. As long as you tell me who you're working for, I'll consider returning it to you." The black-robed man furrowed his brows and scolded in a disdainful tone, "Little bastard, You are really arrogant and ignorant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The items in your hands were made by the Qingshan city lord for that noble. A lowly nobody like you actually dared to snatch food from the tiger's mouth and go against that noble. You're courting death. No one will be able to save you, no matter where you go. The brawny man in golden armor had also lost his patience. He said impatiently, Bai Jun, why are you wasting your time on this little brat? Let's just kill him and plunder his spatial ring. Won't that complete the mission? The dark-skinned old man also nodded in agreement. With a bloodthirsty grin, he said, this brat's blood essence is very abundant and very pure. I'm going to suck him dry. The black-robed man no longer hesitated. He waved his hand and ordered, kill him. As he spoke, his hands reached out from his sleeves and attacked Ji Tianxing like eagle claws. It was only then that Ji Tianxing saw that the black-robed man's hands were like some kind of monster's claws and were covered in pitch-black scales. His 10 fingers were also exceptionally long and sharp. They were strangely curved and suffused with the cold aura of death. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The black-robed man waved his hands, and hundreds of death blades shot out and enveloped Ji Tianxing. The brawny man in golden armor also drew a broadsword. With a roar, he leaped high and slashed out a blood-colored dragon saber-light that was 10,000 feet long. The dark-skinned old man used a pair of blood-colored thin swords and stabbed out more than 300 times in an instant. Immediately, more than 305 colored swordlights rained down on Ji Tianxing, carrying the violent power of laws. In an instant, the overwhelming light of divine techniques drowned out Ji Tianxing's figure. Within the blood-colored light barrier, an area of 150 miles was illuminated by the 5-colored divine light, revealing everything. The violent sword intent and divine power aura formed a huge storm that wreaked havoc. Ji Tianxing did not hold back and directly used his trump card to deal with it with all his strength. Celestial Dragon Tyrant Body. His body bloomed with golden light and instantly turned into a giant that was 1,000 feet tall. Not only was his body as huge as a mountain, but his body also bloomed with golden light and divine dragon shadows. Even his defense and combat strength instantly increased by 6 times, reaching the level of a high-level divine lord. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. He struck out a dragon elephant shadow with his left hand, shattering the sword lights and blood-colored dragon saber light that filled the sky. He waved the burial of heaven in his right hand and stabbed out a pitch-black giant sword toward the black-robed man. Burial of heaven. With his angry roar, the burial of heaven also erupted with all its strength, cooperating with him to use this sword that could bury heaven and earth. The 1,000-foot-long black sword light was mysterious and cold to the extreme. It contained supreme divine power, as if death had descended and reincarnation had reappeared. Compared to the black-robed man's blades of death, it was of a much higher level and much more powerful. Boom! Crack! With a loud bang, the hundreds of blades of death collapsed. The burial of heaven slashed the black-robed man and sent him flying. His left shoulder was cut off, and blood spurted out. The cold aura of death immediately entered his body, freezing half of his body and solidifying his blood. Plop! The black-robed man flew back 50 miles and crashed into a mountain peak, sending dust into the air. Ji Tianxing used 2 more techniques, one for the golden-armored man and the other for the tanned elder. Bam! 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 Boom! Boom! Another series of loud bangs. The golden-armored man's legs were cut off by the sword light. He howled miserably as he fell into the valley, his strength greatly reduced. The tanned elder was hit by more than 100 swords. His soft armor was pierced into a sieve, and more than a dozen bloody holes appeared on his chest and back. He was also sent flying by Ji Tianxing. He crashed into the mountain peak in front of him, blood spurting out of his mouth and nose. The 2 sides had only exchanged a few moves, and the outcome was decided in less than 30 seconds. The 3 middle-level divine lords were no match for Ji Tianxing even when they worked together. They were all severely injured. Such an outcome left the 3 divine lords aghast, and their souls nearly left their bodies. The black-robed man acted as if he had seen a ghost. He desperately activated his divine artifact and released a powerful domain power. It was a 100-foot wide blood-red millstone buried deep in the valley. Under his control, the millstone spun faster and its power reached the maximum. However, Ji Tianxing was not affected at all. He charged forward with unparalleled ferocity. A moment later, the golden-armored man was the first to be killed. His divine body was cut into several pieces by the burial of heaven. His godhead had just escaped when it was cut into pieces. Immediately after, the tanned elder was also killed by Ji Tianxing. His divine body also collapsed, and his godhead shattered. The black-robed man was still alive, but he was intimidated by Ji Tianxing's valiant divine might. He no longer had any will to fight. He put away the blood-red millstone as fast as he could and fled toward Sky Snow County City in a panic. Chapter 29:36. As he fled, the black-robed man was still thinking about a question. Previously, when he used the Blood Nirvana Divine Disc and used the Blood Nirvana Domain, he had suppressed Qin Lai. His qi and blood had flowed backward, and his divine power had become chaotic. His combat strength had greatly weakened. But why had Ji Tianxing recovered so quickly? He had even used a forbidden secret technique to push the power of the Blood Nirvana Divine Disc to the limit. Why was it still useless? Ji Tianxing's control of his own qi and blood had surpassed a superior-grade monarch divine artifact. How could this young fellow be so powerful to such an extent? It didn't make sense. The black-robed man really wanted to know. What secret technique did Ji Tianxing use? Or did he have a special divine artifact? Otherwise, how could he ignore the power of the Blood Nirvana Divine Disc? Unfortunately, the black-robed man didn't have the chance to figure it out. He had just flown out of the valley and fled 100 miles when Ji Tianxing caught up. Heaven-capturing dragon palm, Ji Tianxing growled and stretched out his left hand like a dragon claw, striking out with 36 types of laws. In an instant, the divine power of heaven and earth within a radius of 10,000 miles was absorbed. A golden dragon claw appeared above the black-robed man's head and wrapped around his body. Boom! The golden dragon claw clenched and captured the black-robed man. It was so fast that he didn't even have time to teleport. The supreme divine power of the dragon claw made him unable to struggle or move. Whoosh! The golden dragon claw captured the black-robed man and flew back to Ji Tianxing. With a thought, Ji Tianxing's golden dragon claw crushed the black-robed man into meat paste. His divine body was destroyed, leaving only a 5-colored divine spark. The black-robed man was terrified and instinctively roared, "Stop! You can't kill me. I'm from the Imperial City, you can't kill me, otherwise, you'll really anger that benefactor, and you'll definitely die without a complete corpse." At death's door, the black-robed man had no other way to save his life. He could only bring up the benefactor behind him. Someone from the Imperial City again? Ji Tianxing frowned. He had a bad premonition. When the black-robed man saw this reaction, he thought that there was hope for survival. He quickly advised, as the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than to keep it alive. Moreover, that nobleman is very powerful. You can't afford to offend him. Let me give you a piece of advice. It's best if you let me go and return the 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. In return, I will try my best to plead for that noble to forgive you. Ji Tianxing was non-committal. He looked at him expressionlessly and asked, "Who is this noble person you're talking about?" The black-robed man fell silent. After hesitating for a moment, he said in a low voice, "Brother, don't ask this question anymore. I advise you not to know." Ji Tianxing sneered, 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment is enough to equip an army of tens of thousands. That nobleman is secretly accumulating equipment and building an army. It seems like he's planning something big." The black-robed man's soul grew increasingly nervous as he hurriedly interrupted, "Stop talking. You'll get yourself killed." "Ha ha ha." Ji Tianxing laughed contemptuously, "If you don't tell me that person's identity, you'll be killed right now." The black-robed man was speechless. After weighing the pros and cons for a long time, he finally made up his mind and asked, "If I tell you the identity of that noble person, will you let me live?" "Ha ha ha, what do you think?" Ji Tianxing sneered. The black-robed man was furious. He roared, "Since you won't let me live, I won't tell you even if I die. I won't betray that noble person." Ji Tianxing sneered again. It's fine if you don't tell me. Anyway, I'll refine your godhead and strip your soul of its memories. I'll naturally know the information I want to know. The black-robed man was stunned. He didn't have anything else that could threaten Ji Tianxing. Life and death were all in Ji Tianxing's hands. His heart was dead, and he was in complete despair. Young man, you'll definitely regret the choice you made tonight. You'll pay the most tragic price for your ignorance and arrogance. One day, you'll understand that there are many people in this world that we can't afford to offend. The black-robed man's godhead transmitted the last two sentences. The tone was gloomy and sorrowful. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, "Unfortunately, I'm one of those people that you can't afford to offend." As soon as he finished speaking, the golden dragon claw smashed down. Crack! A crisp cracking sound was heard. The godhead shattered on the spot. At this point, the three monarchs were dead. Ji Tianxing put away the godhead fragments and picked up the black-robed man's interspatial ring. He quickly disappeared into the night. Around 20 breaths later, in the direction of the Sky Snow County city, 100 city guards riding on divine birds appeared. They arrived near the shattered valley. This group of city guards surrounded the valley and carefully inspected the battlefield, looking for traces. In the battle just now, the shockwaves spread over 2,000 li. The dazzling light of the divine technique was especially dazzling in the night. Even the Sky Snow County city, which was 2,000 li away, could see it clearly. The battlefield was too close to the Sky Snow County city. Many people saw that there were experts fighting in the southern outskirts of the city. This made the people very uneasy and worried. Therefore, the supervisor of the city guards at the Monarch God Realm personally led 100 city guards to check the situation. The result was obvious. The city guards investigated for an hour, but they didn't find anything. They only knew that there had been a great battle between Monarch God experts. After all, the mountains and land within a few hundred li had been turned into ruins. Other than that, they didn't find anything. When Ji Tianxing returned to the pine tree courtyard in the Ning mansion, it was already night time. After returning to his residence, he went straight into the secret room. After sitting down cross-legged, he took out 3 interspatial rings and checked the items inside. These belonged to the 3 monarchs just now. There were countless cultivation resources, divine weapons and equipment, elixirs, talismans and many other random things inside. Ji Tianxing roughly sorted through the items. He had obtained more than 50 million divine stones and more than 400 divine crystals. There were more than 100,000 divine pills, talismans, and divine weapons. There were also some special divine items and treasures whose value was hard to estimate. All in all, the wealth of these 3 middle monarchs could be considered rich. However, they were obviously lackeys working for someone and not the leader of a large force. The total wealth of the 3 monarchs added together was only about 1 billion. Ji Tianxing was slightly disappointed. Of course, it wasn't because the wealth was too little. It was because he didn't find anything related to their identities in the interspatial rings. Therefore, he took out the black-robed man's divine spark fragment and started to refine it. Time passed silently. 6 hours later, dawn arrived. Ji Tianxing absorbed the memories of the black-robed man's divine soul and understood the whole story. He. No wonder this person kept saying that he was a nobleman of the imperial city. As I expected, it was another prince. Without a doubt. The nobleman that the 3 monarchs were loyal to was the current second prince. Like the third prince, he was also a strong contender for the throne. Of course, this prince was also an ambitious schemer. Chapter 2937. Ji Tianxing learned a lot from the memories of the black-robed man. The king of the Bloodflame Divine Kingdom had 6 sons and daughters. 2 of them were princesses and 4 princes. The eldest prince, who was the oldest and most mature, had passed away long ago. Now, the second prince, the third prince, and the 5th prince were all qualified to fight for the throne. Among the 3 princes, the second prince was not the strongest, but he was the best at scheming and commanding. The third prince always gave people the impression that he was a gentle and modest gentleman. As a result, the third prince was praised for his kindness and benevolence, as well as his ability and integrity. Many nobles and ministers were inclined to support the third prince. As for the fifth prince, he kept a low profile and was not well known. The second prince felt that after the death of the first prince, he was the eldest son. According to the rules and traditions, the throne had to be passed down to the eldest son. Therefore, he had the greatest chance of succeeding the throne, and it was also the most justifiable choice. Unfortunately, neither the monarch nor the important ministers of the court adhered to this rule and tradition. The king and the ministers were all thinking about which prince was better and more suitable to rule the divine kingdom. This made the second prince very depressed. He had to secretly bribe the ministers to promote the traditional rule of choosing the eldest son. Although many ministers and nobles were willing to accept this idea, it was not effective. It did not shake the king's will. The second prince could only rope in his henchmen and secretly build up his forces. From the lords of the city to the lords of the counties and the ministers, he tried his best to bribe and rope them in. Furthermore, he had even privately hired elite soldiers and raised many experts in secret. He had at least 100,000 soldiers. The lord of the Qingshan city, Yuan Chengkong, was the absolute confidant of Princess Tianfeng. 10 years ago, Princess Tianfeng had been roped in by the second prince. For the sake of the second prince's fight for the throne, she was at his beck and call and did her best. 3 years ago, Princess Tianfeng received a secret letter from the second prince. She knew that the second prince wanted to recruit 50,000 elite soldiers and secretly raise them in the Tianfeng county. If they went north, they could attack the Sunset Seas and make a name for themselves. If they went south, they could use this as a bargaining chip and blackmail during the fight for the throne. When Princess Tianfeng heard this, she gladly expressed her support. They also expressed their loyalty and were willing to provide 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. The second prince praised her greatly and promised that he would promote Princess Tianfeng to be an important minister of the country after he ascended the throne. Infanta Tianfeng was also looking forward to it. She said that she would sacrifice her life for the second prince. However, Princess Tianfeng's finances and assets were insufficient, and she was unable to allocate 10 billion worth of resources within 3 years. Thus, this matter fell on the head of the Qingshan city lord. In the eyes of Princess Tianfeng, the lord of Qingshan city was a money tree with the dark light cave. The Qingshan city lord did not let him down. Within 3 years, he had secretly gathered 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. However, the city lord did not know that the 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment were prepared for the second prince. He thought that Princess Tianfeng was plotting something, so he kept the 50,000 sets of equipment. When Princess Tianfeng sends a message, he will deliver it to her personally. Princess Tianfeng tried to ask the second prince about it. The second prince said that he wasn't in a hurry. He hadn't recruited 50,000 elite soldiers yet, and it might take a few more years before he could do so. Princess Tianfeng then informed the Qingshan city lord that the equipment would only be delivered a few years later. However, who would have thought that Ji Tianxing would enter the Qingshan city at this time? He had become a consecrator of the Qi clan, helped the Qi clan to seize the Dark Light Cave, and caused a series of troubles. The Qingshan city lord had no choice but to ask the Black Mermaid King for help. He asked the Black Mermaid King to assassinate Ji Tianxing. The Black Mermaid King was greedy by nature. He asked for an exorbitant price. He didn't lack cultivation resources or ores, but he wasn't good at smithing. He asked for 30,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. The Qingshan city lord thought about it and agreed to this condition. As long as he could kill Ji Tianxing, he was willing to pay 30,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. Anyway, there were still a few years before the goods were delivered. It wouldn't be too late for him to gather the 30,000 sets of equipment after he seized the Darklight Cave. However, things didn't go as planned. No one would have thought that Ji Tianxing would win in the end. Not only did the Qingshan city lord lose his life, but he also paid 50,000 sets of equipment, 50,000 pearls, and the 100 poison crocodile dragon pearl. After this incident, Princess Tianfeng was furious. The Qingshan city lord was his trusted aide and also his money tree. Now that this tree was cut down by Ji Tianxing, how could he let Ji Tianxing go? More importantly, The 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment were nowhere to be found. Princess Tianfeng had promised the second prince, but now she was going to break her promise. Most importantly, Qi Tianlong and Ning Qinggang had entered the imperial city and were conferred the title of Viscount by the king. The second prince also knew about this and asked Princess Tianfeng about it. Princess Tianfeng didn't dare to hide anything and told him the truth. After the second prince knew the truth, he was furious. He immediately sent 3 of his followers to the Qingshan city to secretly investigate the whereabouts of the 50,000 sets of equipment. The 3 guests were of course the 3 Sir Gods who had been killed that night. After knowing the ins and outs of the matter, Ji Tianxing came to a sudden realization, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. I see. No wonder I couldn't figure out how the Qingshan city lord could have 50,000 sets of equipment. I didn't expect that this guy was working for the second prince. Now that I've killed the Qingshan city lord, Princess Tianfeng, and the 3 followers, and taken away 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment, I've offended the second prince. The second prince will definitely know that Ning Qinggang went to deal with the 50,000 sets of heavenly god equipment. I wonder if the second prince will hold a grudge against the Nings because of this. When he thought of this, Ji Tianxing's frown quickly disappeared. The Nings have always been the third prince's supporters. They have long been the second prince's eyesore, so they don't care about this. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing didn't feel guilty about the Nings anymore. He continued to comb through the black-robed man's divine soul memory. Soon, he learned more about the situation. The second prince was good at forming cliques. Not only did he rope in many governors, princesses, lords, and ministers, but he also had close ties with the major sects. For example, the Evil Blood Palace, one of the 6 major sects, had close ties with him. There were also 2 other sects, who seemed to be cooperating with him. In addition to these top sects, the second prince had also bribed 9 second-rate sects to become his lackeys and accomplices. From what he knew so far, of the 3 princes, the second prince seemed to be the most powerful. Ji Tianxing rubbed his chin and muttered in a playful tone, the second prince has close ties with the major sects. Then could he be the backer of the Blood Sword sect? Currently, his most direct and strongest opponent was the Blood Sword sect. What was certain was that the third prince had nothing to do with the Blood Sword sect. Given the second prince's style, it was very likely that he was the mastermind. However, Ji Tianxing couldn't find any evidence even after searching through the black-robed followers' divine soul memories. It seemed that the backer of the Blood Sword sect wasn't the second prince.